Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto became a dark Jedi of the Force. Naruto x Ahsoka, Star Wars. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Spiral in the Stars. The Republic cruiser shuddered under relentless turbolaser fire, its shields failing against the Separatist battleship's barrage. Emergency lights bathed the command deck in pulsing red as clone troopers scrambled between smoking consoles. Through the viewport, the vastness of space became a chaotic canvas, streaks of green and red energy crisscrossing the void, Republic fighters weaving between massive capital ships. Ahsoka Tano gripped the holodable's edge, her Montrals sensing vibrations through the ship's hull that human ears couldn't detect. At 19, the Togruta was no longer the Impu Lsive Padawan who had left the Jedi Order months earlier. Her orange skin contrasted with the white markings on her face, which had grown more angular as she matured. Twin lightsabers hung at her hips, one standard, one Shoto, neither bearing the traditional blue or green of the Jedi. "We've lost the starboard deflector," announced a clone officer, his voice maintaining military discipline despite the situation. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 6. Captain Keyes, a veteran human with prematurely gray hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, turned to Ahsoka. "This was supposed to be a simple supply run to the outer rim. How did they know our trajectory?" "The Separatists have gotten better at predicting Republic movements," Ahsoka replied, studying the tactical display. "But this feels targeted. They were waiting specifically for us." Another explosion rocked the ship, throwing several crew members to the deck. The tactical officer called out, "Sir, they're deploying boarding craft. At least 3 incoming." Keyes swore under his breath. "They're after something on this ship. Ms. Tano, I know you're just a passenger, but say no more, Captain." Ahsoka's hands moved to her lightsaber hilts. "I'll handle the boarding parties." As she sprinted from the bridge, Ahsoka reached out through the Force, sensing the fear and determination of the clone troopers, the cold calculation of the battle droids. And something else, a strange disturbance she'd never felt before. It pulsed like a heartbeat somewhere ahead, powerful and chaotic, neither light nor dark but something different. The ship trembled again as she reached the main hangar. 3 Separatist boarding crafts had punched through the magnetic shield, disgorging battle droids and super battle droids. Clone troopers had established a defensive position behind cargo containers, exchanging fire with the mechanical invaders. "Hold the line," a sergeant shouted as Ahsoka arrived, her twin lightsabers ignite. Ing with a snap hiss, one blade a brilliant white, the other a slightly shorter silver white. The colors reflected her current path. Neither Jedi nor Sith, but something new. She launched herself into the fray, her blades becoming a dazzling display of precision and grace. Battle droids fell in pieces as she carved through their ranks, deflecting blaster bolts back at their sources. The Force flowed through her, guiding each movement, each leap, each strike. "Advance," she called to the clone troopers, who began pushing forward behind her protective whirlwind of energy. Then she felt it again, that strange pulse in the Force. Stronger now. Something was happening in the center of the hangar, beyond the Separatist boarding craft. The air seemed to warp and twist, energy crackling in patterns unlike anything produced by ship systems or weapons. A battle droid noticed it too. Anomaly detected. Unknown energy signature. Its vocoder cut off as Ahsoka's lightsaber removed its head. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the growing distortion. The space between 2 landed shuttles began to shimmer, reality itself seeming to tear open. Blue-white energy spiraled outward, forming what looked like a miniature galaxy of pure force. "Fall back," Ahsoka ordered the clones, uncertain what this phenomenon might do. "Maintain distance from that portal." The spiraling energy expanded, its rotation accelerating until it became a perfect circle of swirling blue-white light. Lightning crackled around its edges, arcing to nearby metal surfaces. The Force screamed warnings in Ahsoka's mind. This was dangerous, unpredictable, powerful, and then, with a thunderous boom that knocked everyone off their feet, someone, burst through. A figure tumbled from the vortex, crashing into a stack of supply crates. The portal collapsed behind them with a sound like reality itself gasping for breath, leaving only scorched deck plating and the smell of ozone. As the dust settled, Ahsoka approached cautiously. Lightsabers still ignited but held defensively. The clones formed a perimeter, blasters trained on the newcomer. Groaning, the figure pushed debris aside and stood. He was human, or at least appeared to be, a young man perhaps her age or slightly younger, with spiky blonde hair and strange whisker-like marks on his cheeks. His clothing was unlike any she'd seen, orange and black, torn and scorched in places, with a metal plate bearing an unfamiliar spiral symbol attached to a headband. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and his right arm hung at an awkward angle. Most striking were his eyes, brilliantly blue, but with a vertical pupil that momentarily appeared slitted like a predator's before returning to normal. They held pain, confusion, and a depth of experience that belied his youth. "Where?" he began in basic that carried an accent Ahsoka couldn't place, looking around wildly. Then his gaze locked on the battle droids still advancing from the other side of the hangar. "What the hell are those?" Before anyone could respond, a super battle droid targeted the newcomer, its arm-mounted blaster unleashing a barrage of energy bolts. The blonde moved with astonishing speed, dodging with reflexes that seemed almost precognitive. His injured arm didn't slow him as he weaved between bolts that should have been impossible to avoid. "Hey!" he shouted, outrage replacing confusion. "I just got here." To Ahsoka's amazement, the young man formed a strange hand sign, and suddenly the hangar contained a dozen identical copies of him, not holograms, but solid duplicates that moved independently. "What in the Force?" a clone trooper whispered. The duplicates charged the battle droids while the original hung back, clearly assessing the situation. Ahsoka watched, fascinated, as the copies engaged the droids with hand-to-hand combat skills unlike any martial art she recognized. They moved like liquid, flowing around blaster fire, striking with devastating precision at joints and sensors. When hit, the duplicates disappeared in puffs of smoke rather than falling injured, but they'd already wreaked havoc on the droid ranks. The original blonde studied Ahsoka now, his eyes tracking her lightsabers with wary interest. "Are you with them or against them?" he called out, gesturing toward the droids. "Against," Ahsoka replied, deciding honesty was the best approach. "They're trying to take over this ship." The young man nodded once, his face hardening with resolve. "Then I'll help you." He extended his good hand, and blue energy began to swirl in his palm, condensing into a spinning sphere of power that hummed and vibrated with barely contained force. Ahsoka felt it in the Force, not quite dark, not quite light, but pure raw energy shaped by will and something else she couldn't identify. It wasn't a lightsaber or any technology she recognized. It felt almost alive. "Rasengan!" he shouted, charging toward the largest concentration of battle droids. When the sphere made contact with the lead droid, it didn't simply damage it. The energy expanded, creating a vortex that tore apart everything within 3 meters, reducing droids to scattered components. Ahsoka didn't waste the opportunity. She leapt back into battle, her lightsabers becoming a defensive wall for the clones as they pressed forward. Working in tandem with the mysterious newcomer, they systematically eliminated the boarding party until the hangar fell silent except for the crackling of severed droid parts. The young man stood amid the destruction, his duplicates gone, breathing heavily but with barely concealed power still radiating from him. Up close, Ahsoka could see that his injuries were already healing, the cut above his eye had stopped bleeding, and he was moving his previously injured arm with growing ease. "Thanks for the assist," she said, deactivating one lightsaber but keeping the other ready. "Who are you, and how did you get aboard our ship?" The blonde looked at her, taking in her non-human features without apparent surprise, as though he'd seen many species before, but his gaze lingered on her lightsabers with genuine curiosity. "Naruto Uzumaki," he answered, wincing as he rotated his shoulder. "As for how I got here, I was fighting in a war. There was an attack, a dimensional jutsu from Madara. I tried to counter it with Kurama's chakra, and then," he gestured at the scorched deck, "I ended up here. Wherever here is." "You're aboard a Republic cruiser in the mid-rim," Ahsoka explained, watching his face for recognition. None came. Instead, confusion deepened in his expression. "Republic, mid-rim, I don't." He paused, looking out through the magnetic shield at the space battle still raging outside. Genuine shock registered on his features. "Are those stars?" Are we in space? Before Ahsoka could respond, the ship rocked with another hit, and the intercom blared with Captain Keyes' voice, "All hands. Brace for emergency jump to hyperspace. Engine room reports lightspeed capability at 60%, it's now or never." Naruto staggered, grabbing a nearby railing for support. "What's happening now?" "We're about to make a lightspeed jump," Ahsoka explained quickly. "You might want to hold on to something." Light, speed. The confusion in his eyes was genuine. Wherever he'd come from, faster than light travel was apparently not common knowledge. The stars outside stretched into lines, and the ship lurched forward with a bone-deep vibration. Naruto's eyes widened in awe and alarm as the cruiser escaped into hyperspace, leaving the separatist forces behind. "That's not a substitution jutsu," he murmured. "What kind of place is this?" Captain Keyes arrived with a security detail. Blasters not quite pointed at Naruto but definitely at the ready. "Ms. Tano, report. Who is this, and what was that energy disturbance?" Ahsoka stepped between the security team and Naruto, her instincts telling her that the blonde stranger wasn't a threat, at least not to them. "Captain, this is Naruto Uzumaki. He appears to have been pulled through some kind of dimensional portal. He helped us repel the boarding party." The captain's skeptical expression was understandable. "Dimensional portal? That sounds like something from a holonovel." "I know it sounds impossible," Ahsoka admitted. "But I felt the disturbance in the Force. And you saw what happened on the security feeds, didn't you?" Keyes nodded reluctantly. "We did, along with whatever energy technique he used against the droids. Nothing in our database matches it." Naruto, who had been looking between them with growing impatience, finally interrupted. "Look, I don't know what a republic is or what those metal things were. The last thing I remember is fighting Madara Uchiha in the 4th Great Ninja War, trying to protect my friends. There was a flash of light, pain like my body was being pulled apart, and then I was here." His voice carried an edge of desperation. "I need to get back. My friends are in danger." "Ninja War," one of the security officers muttered incredulously. Ahsoka studied Naruto more carefully. The Force swirled around him in patterns she'd never seen before, not like a Jedi or Sith, but something altogether different. His energy seemed to have two distinct signatures intertwined, his own and something else. Something ancient and powerful that slumbered just beneath the surface. "Captain," she said quietly, "I believe him. The Force doesn't lie, and it's telling me he's being truthful." Keyes sighed, holstering his blaster. "Very well, Ms. Tano. I trust your judgment. But ease your responsibility while aboard. We're currently heading for the Terrace outpost for repairs before continuing to our original destination on Felucia." After the captain departed, Ahsoka gestured for Naruto to follow her. "Come on. You need medical attention, and then we can figure out what happened to you." Naruto fell into step beside her, his gait displaying a natural athleticism despite his injuries. "So, you're not human," he observed without judgment. "We have summoning animals where I come from, but nothing quite like you." Ahsoka raised an eye marking. "I'm Togruta, and there are thousands of sentient species in this galaxy. Humans are just one of many." "Galaxy," Naruto repeated, the word heavy with implications. "Not just another continent or hidden village. I'm really not on my world anymore, am I?" The corridor ahead opened into a larger thoroughfare, revealing the scale of the cruiser. Clone troopers and officers moved with purpose, droids rolled past on various errands, and through viewports, the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace cast ethereal light across every surface. Naruto stopped short, taking it all in with expressions that cycled between awe, disbelief, and a deep, mounting sadness. "No," Ahsoka confirmed gently. "I don't think you are." In the medical bay, a 2-1B medical droid approached to treat Naruto's injuries. The blonde ninja immediately took a defensive stance, eyeing the droid with suspicion. "It's okay," Ahsoka assured him. "This isn't like the battle droids. It's a medical droid, it helps heal people. Where I come from, we have medic not machines that think," Naruto said warily, allowing the droid to approach but watching its every move. As the droid conducted its examination, its photoreceptors flickered with confusion. Unusual physiology detected. Subject displays enhanced cellular regeneration. Injuries from AP, approximately 6 hours ago already in final healing stages. "Yeah, I heal fast," Naruto said dismissively. It's a family trait. Inside his mindscape, Naruto reached for the familiar presence of Kurama. The great fox was there, but subdued, weakened by the dimensional transit. Kurama, you okay in there? Asterisk. The nine tails stirred sluggishly. I am present, Kit. But the journey taxed even my chakra. This place, it feels strange. There is energy here similar to chakra, but different. It flows through everything. Can you sense a way back home? Asterisk. Silence stretched before Kurama replied, no. Whatever Madara did, it created a one-way passage. We are adrift. The weight of those words settled on Naruto's shoulders as he returned his attention to the medical bay. The droid was finishing its scan, seeming perplexed by its readings. Subject shows energy patterns inconsistent with known life forms. Recommend detailed analysis by specialist. Ahsoka dismissed the droid. That won't be necessary. He's under my supervision. Once they were alone, she studied Naruto thoughtfully. You were communicating with something just now. I could feel it in the Force, another presence connected to you. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. You could sense that. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Where I come from, I'm what's called a Jinchuriki, a human container for a being of immense power called Kurama. The nine-tailed fox. He's been with me since birth. Is that where your abilities come from? Some of them, Naruto admitted. The rapid healing, the enhanced senses, some of my chakra reserves. But the shadow clones, the Rasengan, those are techniques I learned. In my world, we harness chakra, life energy, to perform jutsu. Different techniques for different purposes. It sounds similar to how we use the Force, Ahsoka said. The energy field that connects all living things. Jedi and Sith can tap into it, channel it, shape it. Jedi, Sith. Naruto's face scrunched in confusion. The Jedi are peacekeepers, or were supposed to be, before this war. They use the light side of the Force for knowledge and defense. The Sith use the dark side for power and aggression. Ahsoka's tone carried a hint of disillusionment. I was trained as a Jedi but left the Order when I realized it had lost its way. Naruto nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. In my world, we have hidden villages of ninja with different philosophies too. I'm from Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. We believe in the will of fire, protecting others, standing together. His expression darkened. But there are those who seek power at any cost, like Madara. This war you mentioned, the Fourth Great Ninja War. Madara Uchiha and the Akatsuki were trying to capture the tailed beasts, beings like Kurama, to create a weapon that could enslave everyone. My friends, his voice cracked. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, everyone was fighting when I got pulled away. I don't know if they're alive or... Ahsoka placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the genuine anguish radiating from him. I understand what it's like to be separated from everyone you care about. To wonder if you made the right choices. Quote, their eyes met, and for a moment, a connection formed between them. Two young warriors caught up in conflicts larger than themselves, both standing on principles when institutions failed them. The ship shuddered, dropping out of hyperspace with an alarm blaring through the corridors. That's not good, Ahsoka muttered, already moving toward the door. We're not supposed to reach Terrace for another 6 hours. Naruto followed her without hesitation as they raced back to the bridge. Emergency lighting had replaced the standard illumination, and crew members rushed to battle stations. When they arrived, Captain Keyes was bent over the tactical display, his expression grim. Hyperdrive failure, he announced as they entered. The damage was worse than we thought. Engineering says the motivator is completely burned out. Where are we? Ahsoka asked, moving to the viewport. Outer Rim, Belderon Sector. There's a habitable moon in this system where we can attempt repairs. But long-range scanners show separatist activity in the area. Naruto studied the tactical display, his eyes quickly picking up the basic principles despite never having seen such technology. These red symbols are enemies. When Keyes nodded, Naruto continued. They're moving in a standard search pattern. I've seen the Anbu use similar tactics. They're looking for something specific. Keyes raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. You have tactical training. I've led teams on missions, Naruto replied simply. He's right, Ahsoka confirmed, examining the pattern. They haven't detected us yet, but they will soon. We need to reach that moon and find a place to hide the ship. The cruiser limped toward the moon, a blue-green orb with vast oceans and scattered landmasses. As they approached, sensors detected a separatist picket force changing course to intercept. "They've spotted us," an officer reported. "Two light cruisers and fighter support, moving to cut off our approach vector." He's turned to Ahsoka. "Can you pilot a fighter? We need to buy time for the main ship to reach the surface." "I can," she confirmed. "I'm coming too," Naruto stated with calm certainty. He started to object, but Ahsoka cut him off. "He took out an entire boarding party almost single-handedly, Captain. I've seen what he can do." "I've never flown one of your ships," Naruto admitted. "But I don't need to. I can help in other ways." Minutes later, Ahsoka sat in the cockpit of a V-wing fighter, launching from the hangar with a squadron of clone pilots. Naruto crouched behind her seat, studying the controls with intense focus. "This is basically like a mechanical bird, right?" he asked. "But with weapons." Ahsoka couldn't help but laugh despite the situation. "Something like that. Just hold on and let me handle the flying. You focus on whatever you're planning." The squadron engaged the incoming separatist vulture droids and tri-fighters. Ahsoka's fighter wove through the enemy formation, her force-enhanced reflexes allowing maneuvers that would have crushed an ordinary pilot under G-forces. "Those unmanned fighters," Naruto observed as they twisted through the battle. "They're predictable, programmed, like training dummies with set patterns." "You're catching on quick," Ahsoka said, impressed. She rolled the fighter to avoid incoming laser fire, then lined up a shot that destroyed two vulture droids in succession. "Get me closer to that bigger ship," Naruto requested, pointing to one of the separatist light cruisers. "I have an idea, but I need to be within range." "Define range," Ahsoka said skeptically. "About 100 meters. That's practically suicide. Their point defense systems would tear us apart before we got that close." Naruto grinned, the expression transforming his face with confident determination. "Trust me, I've faced worse odds." Something in his voice, or perhaps in the force surrounding him, convinced Ahsoka. She banked the fighter hard, cutting through the main battle line toward the nearest cruiser. "Red 3, what are you doing?" came the squadron leader's voice over the comm. "You're breaking formation, creating a diversion," Ahsoka replied. "Keep their fighters occupied." As they approached the cruiser, its batteries opened fire, filling space with deadly energy bolts. Ahsoka called deeply on the Force, weaving a path through the barrage that should have been impossible. "Almost there," she called over her shoulder. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu. Suddenly, the cockpit became impossibly crowded as a clone materialized, perched precariously on the fighter's canopy. Before Ahsoka could react, the clone gathered chakra, formed a Rasengan, and launched itself toward the cruiser's bridge. "What are you?" Ahsoka began, but her words died as she watched the impossible. The clone soared through vacuum, the Rasengan growing larger and changing shape, developing what looked like shuriken blades of energy around its circumference. When it struck the cruiser's bridge viewport, the effect was catastrophic. The enhanced Rasengan drilled through the reinforced transparasteel, then expanded inside, tearing apart the bridge in a swirling vortex of chakra. With its command center destroyed, the cruiser began to drift, its coordinated fire ceasing. "How did your clone survive in space?" Ahsoka asked incredulously as she pulled the fighter away. "And how did you create it outside the ship?" Naruto looked surprised by the question. "It's just a chakra construct. It doesn't need to breathe. And I can form them anywhere within range." His expression became thoughtful, though it took more chakra than usual. "Something about this place makes my techniques work differently." The Republic cruiser used the confusion to break through the separatist line, descending rapidly toward the moon's surface with the fighter squadron providing cover. They landed in a densely forested region, the massive trees providing natural camouflage from orbital sensors. Back aboard the damaged cruiser, Captain Keyes called an emergency meeting. "Engine. Earing estimates at least 3 days for hyperdrive repairs, assuming we can salvage parts from the secondary systems. That maneuver you two pulled bought us time, but the separatists will send ground forces once they realize we're down here. Then we need to prepare defenses," Ahsoka said. "This forest provides cover, but we should establish a perimeter." "Naruto, who had been staring out a viewport at the alien landscape, turned back to them. I can help with that. Scouting, traps, diversions, that's basic shinobi training. Shinobi, a clone commander asked. Ninja, Naruto clarified. Where I'm from, we're trained from childhood in stealth, combat, and reconnaissance. He's looked skeptical but nodded. At this point, I'll take any advantage we can get. Commander Gree, assign a squad to assist Ms. Tano and Mr. Uzumaki with perimeter security. As they left the meeting, Ahsoka noticed Naruto's pensive expression. What are you thinking about? This world. These worlds, he corrected, gesturing toward the stars visible through the viewport. Everything's so different, yet some things are the same. War, people fighting for what they believe in. He paused. And you left your order because it lost its way. That takes courage. Ahsoka was surprised by his insight. The Jedi were supposed to be peacekeepers, not generals. When they accused me of a crime I didn't commit, then offered a weak apology when I was proven innocent, I realized I couldn't be part of an institution that had compromised its values so deeply. In my village, I was shunned as a child because of Kurama, the nine tails inside me. People feared what they didn't understand. Naruto's eyes held old pain, but not bitterness. I had to earn their respect by proving myself over and over. But I never gave up on my dream of becoming Hokage, the village leader, because I wanted to protect everyone, even those who hated me. His words resonated with Ahsoka, reminding her of the core Jedi teaching about compassion that had become lost in the politics of war. Your determination is admirable. Back home, they call it my ninja way, never going back on my word, never giving up. Naruto smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Now I don't know if I'll ever see my village again. We'll figure something out, Ahsoka promised. If there's a way to get you back, we'll find it. They spent the next few hours establishing a defensive perimeter around the cruiser. Naruto's shadow clones proved invaluable, multiplying their workforce exponentially. The clones set up early warning systems using techniques that combined standard technology with Naruto's unique abilities, chakra-infused tags that would alert him to intruders. The clone troopers watched with fascination as Naruto demonstrated abilities that defied their understanding of physics. One particularly grizzled sergeant named Brick approached Ahsoka as she supervised the placement of sensor beacons. Ms. Tano, what exactly is he? Brick asked, his voice low. I've seen Jedi do some impressive things, but nothing like this. He's from another dimension, Sergeant, Ahsoka replied simply. His abilities are based on something called chakra, similar to the Force but utilized differently. Another dimension, Brick repeated skeptically. With all due respect, that sounds impossible. Ahsoka finished with a slight smile. After everything we've seen in this war, are you really going to draw the line at dimensional travelers? Brick considered this, then shrugged. Fair point. As long as he's on our side, I won't complain about the extra help. By nightfall, the perimeter was secure, and repairs to the hyperdrive were underway. Ahsoka found Naruto sitting atop the cruiser, gazing up at unfamiliar constellations. She climbed up and settled beside him, feeling the cool night air against her skin. The stars are different, Naruto said without preamble. Even the moon is wrong. Two of them, and neither looks like mine. Ahsoka followed his gaze upward. Those are this planet's moons. Every world has its own view of the galaxy. Kurama is getting stronger, Naruto continued. He thinks this place, T.S. Force, you mentioned, is somehow compatible with chakra. He can feel it flowing through everything, like nature energy but different. The Force binds the galaxy together, Ahsoka explained. All living things create it, are connected by it. Some of us can sense and use it. Like your light swords, lightsabers, she corrected. Yes, they're powered by kyber crystals that resonate with the Force. Naruto nodded thoughtfully. When I use Sage Mode, a technique for gathering nature energy, I can sense everything around me. Life, movement, intention. Is that what the Force feels like to you? Similar, perhaps, Ahsoka acknowledged. I can sense emotions, intentions, life forms. The Force guides my actions, enhances my reflexes. Like when you were flying that fighter, Naruto observed. No normal human could have navigated through that barrage. And no normal human could have sent a clone through vacuum to destroy a cruiser's bridge, Ahsoka countered with a small smile. Naruto laughed, the sound genuine and warm. I guess we're both pretty far from normal. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion that lit up the night sky. Both warriors were on their feet instantly, senses alert. Separatist drop ships, Ahsoka identified, her Montrals picking up the distinctive engine sounds. At least 3, coming from the northeast. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, extending his senses in a way that reminded Ahsoka of Jedi meditation. When he opened them again, they had changed, turning yellow-orange with rectangular pupils, and red pigmentation appearing around his eyes. 5 ships, he corrected, 2 more approaching from the west, and something larger hanging back, a transport of some kind. They're bringing heavy equipment. Ahsoka stared at him in surprise. His force signature had changed dramatically, expanded, becoming more integrated with their surroundings. Your eyes. Sage mode, Naruto explained succinctly. I'm channeling natural energy. It enhances everything. Strength, speed, senses, jutsu power. They jumped down from the cruiser's hull, landing lightly despite the considerable height. Clone troopers were already mobilizing, taking defensive positions around the ship. Captain Keyes approached, his expression grim. Sensors confirm separatist landing craft. Looks like a full battalion of battle droids, plus armor support. They're trying to capture the ship, Ahsoka deduced. Or at least prevent us from repairing it. We need to thin their numbers before they reach us, Naruto stated, his sage-enhanced eyes scanning the darkened forest. I can set up an ambush. Alone? Keyes asked incredulously. Naruto formed a hand sign, and suddenly 20 shadow clones stood behind him, each wearing the same determined expression. Not alone. Ahsoka ignited her lightsabers. I'm coming with you, Captain. Keep your men here to defend the ship. We'll disrupt their advance and force them to split their forces. Keyes looked between them, then nodded sharply. Very well, but maintain calm contact, and if you're overwhelmed, we'll fall back, Ahsoka assured him. As they moved through the forest, Ahsoka was impressed by Naruto's stealth. Despite his bright clothing, he blended with the shadows perfectly, moving without sound. His clones spread out, each taking a different route toward the approaching separatist forces. In sage mode, I can sense their exact positions, Naruto whispered. The droids feel empty in nature energy. Not like living things. They're machines, Ahsoka confirmed. Programmed to follow orders. The force flows around them, not through them. They reached a ridge overlooking a clearing where the first separatist drop ships had landed. Battle droids were deploying in formation, accompanied by droidekas and B-2 super battle droids. Behind them, armored vehicles, AATs and dwarf spider droids, provided heavy support. Naruto surveyed the force with a tactical eye. We need to take out their command structure first, then their heavy weapons. See that tactical droid? Ahsoka pointed to a specialized droid directing the deployment. That's their field commander. Naruto nodded. I'll create a diversion on the far side. When they redirect forces to investigate, you take out the commander. And the tanks? A feral grin spread across Naruto's face. Leave those to me. Before Ahsoka could ask what he meant, Naruto had vanished, moving through the underbrush with preternatural speed. Moments later, explosions erupted on the opposite side of the clearing, not grenades or thermal detonators, but concentrated chakra released in controlled bursts. The battle droids responded predictably, redirecting forces toward the disturbance. As their formation thinned, Ahsoka seized her opportunity, using the force to leap from the ridge directly toward the tactical droid. Her lightsabers flashed, decapitating the commander before it could react, then continued to air deadly dance through the surrounding battle droids. On the far side of the clearing, Naruto had engaged the main force, or rather, his shadow clones had. They attacked from multiple directions, using substitution techniques to appear and disappear, creating confusion in the droid ranks. The real Naruto, still enhanced by Sage Mode, approached the heavy armor from behind. Ahsoka watched in amazement as he formed a technique unlike any she'd seen before. It began as a Rasengan, but then transformed, growing, changing shape, developing what looked like a planetary system of smaller energy spheres orbiting a larger core. Planetary Rasengan. Naruto's voice carried across the battlefield as he slammed the technique into the lead AAT. The tank didn't simply explode, it disintegrated, the whirling chakra tearing through its armor like paper, then expanding outward to catch two nearby tanks in its destructive radius. The droids, programmed for conventional warfare, found their tactics useless against Naruto's unpredictable fighting style. Their numerical advantage meant little when shadow clones could match their numbers, and their armor proved inadequate against chakra-based attacks. Ahsoka moved through their ranks like a whirlwind of light, her dual blades creating a defensive perimeter that no droid could penetrate. When a droideka rolled forward, deploying its shield, she sensed rather than saw Naruto's approach from above, a shadow clone dropping from the trees to place an explosive tag directly on its shield generator. They fought in perfect tandem, as though they'd trained together for years rather than met hours ago. Ahsoka would create an opening, and Naruto would exploit it. Naruto would draw fire, and Ahsoka would flank the distracted droids. Through the Force and chakra, they anticipated each other's movements with uncanny precision. When the last droid fell, they stood amid the wreckage, breathing heavily but exhilarated by their success. Naruto's sage mode had faded, his eyes returning to their normal blue, but the confident set of his shoulders remained. That, Ahsoka began, deactivating her lightsabers, was impressive. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that seemed almost shy despite his battlefield prowess. We make a good team. Your sword techniques, lightsaber techniques, they're amazing. Like watching a dance. And you, our shadow clones and Rasengan variants are unlike anything I've seen, Ahsoka returned. The way you manipulate energy, it's not like Jedi or Sith techniques. Their comms crackled with Captain Keyes' voice. Tano, Uzumaki, report. We're detecting multiple explosions in your vicinity. Separatist advance force neutralized, Ahsoka responded. But there are more coming. We should. She never finished the sentence. A concussive blast threw them both forward as a new dropship appeared overhead, this one larger and more heavily armed. It hovered above the clearing, its searchlight pinning them in harsh white light. From its hold descended a figure in black armor, their descent controlled by a jetpack. As they landed, Ahsoka recognized the distinctive Mandalorian helmet, painted with red and gold designs that marked them as a high-ranking member of Death Watch, the terrorist faction that had nearly taken over Mandalore. Well, came a female voice from behind the helmet. Ahsoka Tano, last I heard, you'd left the Jedi Order. The Mandalorian activated a wrist-mounted flamethrower, sending a stream of fire between Ahsoka and Naruto, forcing them apart. Count Dooku will be interested to learn you're still interfering in separatist operations. Naruto rolled clear of the flames, coming up in a combat stance. Friend of yours? He asked Ahsoka sarcastically. Not exactly, Ahsoka replied. Lightsabers at the ready. Death Watch. Mandalorian extremists allied with the separatists. The Mandalorian launched into the air on her jetpack, raining blaster fire down on them from above. Ahsoka deflected the bolts with practiced ease, while Naruto dodged with inhuman speed. Mandalorians have a culture built around combat, Ahsoka called to Naruto as they evaded another burst of flames. Don't underestimate her. I never underestimate anyone, Naruto replied, forming hand signs. Water style. Water bullet jutsu. To Ahsoka's astonishment, Naruto expelled a consent-rated jet of water from his mouth with enough force to knock the Mandalorian off balance mid-flight. She recovered quickly, firing wrist rockets that forced them to separate again. Interesting abilities, the Mandalorian observed. Landing on a fallen drop ship. You're not a Jedi or Sith. Count Dooku will be even more interested in you, outsider. Count who? Naruto asked, circling warily. Leader of the Separatists, Ahsoka explained tersely. Former Jedi turned Sith Lord. The Mandalorian laughed coldly. Enough talk. She activated a device on her wrist, and suddenly the clearing was filled with the mechanical sounds of reinforcements approaching, more battle droids emerging from the forest. We're surrounded, Ahsoka realized, sensing the encirclement through the Force. Naruto stood back to back with her, kunai knives appearing in his hands from hidden pouches. Then we break through, together. As droids closed in from all sides and the Mandalorian prepared another attack, Naruto closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they had changed again. not sage mode this time, but slitted red pupils surrounded by orange-red irises. His whisker marks deepened, becoming more pronounced, and a visible aura of reddish energy began to emanate from his body. "Kurama," he whispered, "let's show them what we can do." The energy expanded, forming what appeared to be a translucent cloak around his body, with bubbling protrusions that resembled animal ears atop his head. Ahsoka felt the power surge through the Force, wild, ancient, predatory, yet controlled by Naruto's will. The Mandalorian hesitated, clearly sensing the danger. "What manner of weapon is that?" "Not a weapon," Naruto corrected, his voice deeper, resonant with dual tones. "A partner." He moved with blinding speed, faster than before, leaving afterimages as he tore through the droid ranks. Where his chakra-cloaked form touched the machines, they didn't merely break, they disintegrated, the corrosive energy eating through metal and circuitry like acid. Ahsoka pressed their advantage, leaping high and bringing her lightsabers down on the Mandalorian's position. The armored warrior blocked with a V-Bra blade that sparked against the energy blades but held. "You've picked a strange ally, Tano," the Mandalorian commented, pressing forward with surprising strength. "The Jedi Council would never approve." "I don't answer to the Council anymore," Ahsoka replied, breaking the blade lock with a Force-enhanced push. "And neither does he." Across the battlefield, Naruto had cleared a path through the droids, but more were arriving. The Mandalorian took advantage of Ahsoka's momentary distraction, firing a whipcord that wrapped around her legs, then activating her jetpack to drag the Togruta across the rough ground. Naruto saw Ahsoka's predicament and changed direction mid-leap. 2 chakra arms extended from his cloak, stretching impossibly to intercept the Mandalorian's flight path. They grabbed the armored warrior, yanking her from the air with irresistible force. The Mandalorian crashed into the ground hard enough to crack her helmet, revealing a portion of a human female face beneath. She scrambled to her feet, firing her remaining wrist rockets wildly before activating her jetpack again. "This isn't over," she declared, ascending rapidly beyond their reach. "Count Dooku will learn of both of you." With that, she disappeared into the night sky, presumably toward a hidden ship. Naruto released his chakra cloak, the red energy receding as he rushed to Ahsoka's side. "You okay?" he asked, helping her cut free of the whipcord. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her legs bore friction burns from being dragged. "But we need to get back to the ship. If she's reporting to Dooku, we can expect a much larger force soon." They retreated through the forest, taking a circuitous route to avoid the remaining droids. Naruto created shadow clones to lay false trails, buying them time to reach the Republic cruiser. Captain Keyes met them at the entry ramp, his expression grave. "We monitored the engagement. Engineering has accelerated repairs, but we're still at least 12 hours from hyperspace capability. The Separatists will regroup before then," Ahsoka said. "With heavier forces." Naruto looked thoughtful. "If they want this ship, we can use that against them. Make them think we're still here while you escape." "What are you suggesting?" Keyes asked. "A diversion," Naruto explained. "My shadow clones can maintain the appearance of activity around the ship, while you move your people to that ridge system we passed on the way in. The natural caves there would hide your life signs from sensors." "And what about you?" Ahsoka questioned, concern evident in her voice. Naruto's expression was calm, determined. "I'll stay with the ship, coordinating the shadow clones. When the Separatists commit their forces to an assault, I'll draw them in, then escape using a transformation technique. By the time they realize it's a trap, you'll be ready to extract." Keyes considered the plan. "It's risky. Less risky than a direct confrontation when we're outnumbered and outgunned," Ahsoka pointed out. The captain nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Minimal equipment, essential personnel only." As the clones and crew prepared to move out, Ahsoka pulled Naruto aside. "I'm staying with you. 2 are better than 1 for this kind of operation." Naruto started to protest, then saw the determination in her eyes, the same stubborn resolve he recognized in himself. "All right, but promise me you'll get clear if things go sideways. These people need you." "They need both of us," Ahsoka corrected. "We're in this together now." As night gave way to dawn, the Republic forces slipped away into the ridge system, leaving Naruto, Ahsoka, and a company of shadow clones maintaining the appearance of normal activity around the cruiser. Through careful chakra manipulation, Naruto created the illusion of repair work continuing, while actually laying traps throughout the ship. Standing on the cruiser's bridge, Naruto gazed out at the alien forest. In some ways, this reminds me of the forests around Konoha. Different plants, different animals, but the same feeling of life everywhere. You miss your home, Ahsoka observed softly. Every minute, Naruto admitted, but I can't change what happened. All I can do is find a way forward from here. He turned to her, blue eyes serious. What about you? After this mission, what's your plan? Ahsoka leaned against a console, considering the question. I've been adrift since leaving the Order. Taking odd jobs, helping where I can. The war makes it hard to stay neutral. You don't strike me as someone who can stand by while others fight, Naruto observed. A small smile touched Ahsoka's lips. Neither do you. Their conversation was interrupted by a shadow clone's arrival. Sensors detecting multiple ships entering the atmosphere, it reported in Naruto's voice. Larger force this time, heavy transports, bomber support. They're done testing our defenses, Ahsoka said grimly. This will be a full assault. Naruto nodded. Then let's make it memorable. As the separatist forces approached, Naruto and Ahsoka finalized their trap. The cruiser's remaining systems were rigged for remote detonation, and shadow clones were positioned strategically throughout the ship and surrounding forest. Standing at the edge of the forest, watching the first separatist ships appear on the horizon, Ahsoka felt a strange calm settle over her. Despite the danger, despite the overwhelming odds, she felt more centered than she had since leaving the Jedi Order. Perhaps it was Naruto's unwavering confidence. Or perhaps it was finding a kindred spirit, someone else who had walked away from everything they knew to follow their own path. Ready? She asked, lightsabers in hand but not yet ignited. Naruto smiled, that determined expression that transformed his face into something immovably resolute. Always. Together, they turned to face the approaching army, too. Warriors from different dimensions united by circumstance, but bound by something stronger, a shared belief in protecting others, no matter the cost. You know, Naruto said as the first separatist drop ships began their descent. I think this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. Ahsoka couldn't help but smile in return. I think you might be right. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Shadows of Two Worlds. Rust-colored dust billowed around the landing struts of the modified light freighter as it settled onto the barren plateau. The vessel, a battered YT-2400 with mismatched hull plating and aftermarket weapons systems, looked precisely like what it pretended to be, a smuggler's ship with no particular allegiance. The perfect disguise for fugitives from both Republic and Separatist attention. The boarding ramp descended with a pneumatic hiss, releasing a cloud of cabin temperature air that momentarily shimmered in the planet's oppressive heat. Naruto stepped out first, instinct. Idly scanning their surroundings with the practiced vigilance of a shinobi. The endless red desert of Ord Mantell's outback stretched to a wavering horizon, broken only by twisted rock formations and the distant, hazy outline of a settlement. 3 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from the forest moon. 3 weeks of constantly moving, avoiding populated systems, and searching for info. Information about dimensional travel, or anything remotely similar. 3 weeks of Naruto learning about this galaxy while teaching Ahsoka about chakra. Feels like Suna, he muttered, adjusting the dark gray cloak he now wore over his orange and black outfit, a concession to discretion, though he'd flatly refused to abandon his distinctive clothing entirely. Only hotter, if that's possible. Ahsoka emerged behind him, her own attire modified from when they'd first met. She'd exchanged her Jedi-adjacent outfit for fitted gray pants, boots, and a sleeveless dark blue tunic with armored shoulders. Her lightsabers remained at her hips, but a blaster now accompanied them, another concession to practicality in a galaxy where Force users were increasingly hunted. Suna, she inquired, her montrals sensing vibrations through the ground that human ears couldn't detect. Movement in the settlement, but nothing approaching their position. The village hidden in the sand, Naruto explained, a distant look crossing his features. Home of my friend Gaara. Desert village, brutal training methods, incredible persistence. A wry smile curved his lips. Sound like any warriors you know. Mandalorians, Ahsoka replied immediately. Recognizing the parallels, particularly the traditional clans. Captain Keyes sent a message this morning, By the way, they made it back to Republic space. Naruto nodded, tension visibly easing from his shoulders. Though they'd parted ways with the Republic cruiser after escaping the forest moon, he'd worried about the crew. Good. They seemed like decent people. For soldiers in a war they didn't choose. Quote, the comparison to shinobi wasn't lost on either of them. Our contact should be at the cantina in that settlement, Ahsoka said, gesturing toward the distant cluster of buildings. Supposedly, he has information about force anomalies in this sector. Might be nothing, but it's the first lead we've found, Naruto finished. I know. Worth checking out. They secured the ship and began the trek across the desert, moving with the efficient pace of those accustomed to covering difficult terrain. After the chaos of their escape, they'd committed to finding a way to understand Naruto's dimensional displacement, and potentially reverse it. The quest had led them through rumor and whispered myth to this backwater planet on the edge of Hutt space. Still getting those dreams? Ahsoka asked as they walked, her voice carefully neutral. Naruto's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Every night, always the same. The battlefield, Madara activating the jutsu, everyone screaming. His fists clenched. And then nothing. Blackness. Like they all just stopped existing. Or you did, Ahsoka suggested gently. From their perspective, the theory wasn't new. They'd discussed it often. The possibility that from his friend's viewpoint in Konoha, Naruto had simply vanished, perhaps presumed dead in the conflict. It didn't make the separation easier, but it offered a sliver of hope that his disappearance hadn't somehow caused their destruction. Yeah, Naruto's voice was uncharacteristically subdued. Kurama thinks the same. The Nine-Tail S had become more active as weeks passed, his consciousness interacting with the Force in ways neither Naruto nor Ahsoka fully understood. The ancient chakra beast seemed fascinated by this new energy field, testing its boundaries within their shared mindscape. He's been quiet today, Naruto added. Says the Force feels different here. Murky. Ahsoka frowned, extending her own senses. He's right. There's something discordant. Like the Force is out of balance, more than usual. The settlement materialized from the heat haze as they approached, a ragged collection of Duracrete buildings. Shipping containers converted to dwellings, and a handful of more permanent structures. No formal government existed here. The outpost operated under the practical jurisdiction of whoever had the most firepower at any given moment. Currently, that appeared to be a gang of Nikto enforcers patrolling the perimeter, their blaster rifles held with casual menace. They watched Naruto and Ahsoka approach but made no move to intercept them. Just another pair of off-worlders coming to conduct business best kept away from core world authorities. Remember, Ahsoka murmured as they entered the settlement's dusty main thoroughfare. We're just independent contractors looking for salvage opportunities. Nothing to do with Jedi, Sith, Republic, or Separatists. Naruto adopted a slightly different posture, less the alert shinobi, more the casual mercenary. It was a transformation Ahsoka had witnessed repeatedly during their weeks together. For all his forthright personality, Naruto possessed remarkable adaptive skills when necessary. Got it, he replied. Though I still think your head, tails, Montrals and Leku, Ahsoka supplied with the patience of someone who'd explained this multiple times. Are pretty distinctive, Naruto finished. Not many Togruta bounty hunters out here, right? Fewer than there once were, she acknowledged grimly. But enough that I won't immediately stand out. And it's better than trying to hide them under a hood in this heat. The cantina occupied the settlement's central building, a two-story structure with windowless walls and multiple exits. Music with a driving, discordant rhythm spilled from the open doorway along with the mingled smells of spilled alcohol, unwashed bodies, and cooking grease. They paused at the entrance, both instinctively cataloging threats and exits. Naruto's nose wrinkled at the assault on his enhanced senses. Reminds me of that dive bar in Tanzaku town where pervy sage used to gather. Intelligence, he muttered. His expression somewhere between nostalgia and disgust. Ahsoka raised an eye marking. Your mentor took you to bars as a kid. Not intentionally, Naruto clarified with a faint grin. I'd follow him when he ditched me during training. Usually found him getting slapped by women or passed out in an alley. The casual revelation about his unconventional upbringing wasn't uncommon. In their weeks together, Ahsoka had assembled a patchwork understanding of Naruto's world through such offhand comments, a society where children trained as soldiers, where extraordinary power coexisted with feudal political structures, where demons could be sealed within human hosts. Not unlike this galaxy in some respects, she often thought. The cantina's interior was typically dim and crowded, filled with a cross-section of outer rim society, smugglers, mercenaries, fugitives, and locals. A Twi'lek dancer performed half-heartedly on a small platform while patrons focused more intently on their drinks and hushed conversations. Back corner, Ahsoka indicated with a subtle nod. Human male in the green jacket. That's our contact. They navigated through the crowd, Naruto staying close enough to Ahsoka to appear as partners but giving her space to move freely if trouble started. Another adaptation he'd made quickly, understanding that her fighting style required different spacing than a shinobi squad. Their contact, a middle-aged human with a cybernetic eye and nervous hands, watched their approach with poorly concealed anxiety. When they reached his table, he gestured to the empty seats without speaking. Fulcrum, Ahsoka said simply, using the code name she'd adopted for sensitive communications. The man nodded jerkily. Call me Terrace. You're punctual. Good. His accent placed him from the core worlds. Probably Coruscant itself. The type who'd fled to the outer rim after gambling debts or political scandal. Drink. He pushed 2 glasses of amber liquid toward them. Naruto casually switched the glasses. His movement too quick for an ordinary human to track, then raised his to his lips without drinking. Ahsoka followed suit, though she noticed Naruto's nostrils flare slightly, testing for poison with his enhanced senses. You have information about force anomalies, she stated rather than asked. Terrace glanced around furtively before leaning forward. There's an abandoned mining facility in the northern canyons. Corporations pulled out decades ago when the ore veins ran dry, but locals avoid it. Say the place is haunted. Haunted, Naruto repeated flatly. Their word, not mine, Terrace amended hastily. But something's there. Prospectors who ignore the warnings don't come back. Or they do, but. He tapped his temple meaningfully. Changed. Talking nonsense about doorways between worlds. Voices from beyond the veil. Ahsoka and Naruto exchanged a look. It wasn't much, but it aligned with the fragments they'd pieced together elsewhere, locations where the barrier between dimensions seemed thinner, where the force manifested in unpredictable ways. What's your interest in this? Ahsoka asked, years of Jedi training making her cautious of too convenient information. Terrace shrugged with calculated casualness. Academic curiosity. And I've got debts. Your credits will help with those. A lie, but perhaps not a dangerous one. Naruto caught Ahsoka's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He'd detected the falsehood too, but didn't sense malicious intent. The coordinates, Ahsoka prompted. Terrace slid a datachip across the table. All there, including the access codes for the main facility, assuming the systems still work. Now, about my payment. Naruto placed a small pouch on the table, the credits inside clinking softly. As agreed, half now, half when we verify the information. The transaction complete, Terrace pocketed the credits and stood. Pleasure doing business. Word of advice, whatever you're looking for at that mine, be careful. This planet has history. Dark history. With that cryptic warning, he departed, weaving through the crowd toward the exit. Naruto watched him go, blue eyes narrowed thoughtfully. He was telling the truth about the mine. He observed quietly, but lying about why he told us. Ahsoka nodded. I sensed the same. Could be a trap. Almost definitely a trap, Naruto agreed with surprising cheerfulness. Question is, whose trap? And why? Before Ahsoka could respond, the cantina's atmosphere shifted subtly. Conversations quieted, the music faltered, and patrons began finding reasons to relocate or leave entirely. The source of the disturbance became apparent as a figure entered from a side door, a tall, bald woman with ashen skin and a lithe, predatory grace. She wore fitted black armor accented with dark gray, and curved hilts hung at her hips. Ventress, Ahsoka breathed, her hand instinctively moving toward her own lightsabers. Naruto tensed beside her, recognizing the Nam from Ahsoka's accounts of the Clone Wars. Asajj Ventress, former Sith apprentice, then Count Dooku's assassin, now a bounty hunter after being betrayed by her master. Dangerous, unpredictable, and in timidly familiar with both sides of the Force. The pale woman surveyed the cantina with predatory silver eyes, her gaze eventually settling on their table. A smile curved her lips, not friendly, but not overtly hostile either. "Well," she drawled, approaching with lethal grace, "if it isn't Ahsoka Tano. No longer a Jedi, I hear. Wise decision." Her accent carried the cultured tones of Sereno aristocracy, at odds with her current mercenary appearance. "And you've found yourself a new companion." Her eyes assessed Naruto with cold precision, lingering on the whisker marks on his cheeks. "Interesting. You're not from around here, are you, boy?" Naruto met her gaze unflinchingly. "Neither are you, originally." "Dathomir, right." Surprise flickered briefly across Ventress's features before. Her mask of sardonic amusement returned. "You've done your homework." "How? Unexpected. What do you want, Ventress?" Ahsoka demanded, not bothering to hide her wariness. "Information," Ventress replied, sliding uninvited into the vacant seat at their table. "The same as you, I suspect. That nervous little man who just left. He's been approaching anyone rumored to have Force connections, Ped. DLING. The same story about haunted mines and dimensional doorways." "And you're interested why?" Ahsoka pressed. Ventress signaled a server droid, ordered a drink, then leaned back with calculated casualness. "Let's just say I've developed an interest in obscure Force phenomena since parting ways with my former master. Particularly those that might prove useful." "Useful for what?" Naruto asked bluntly. Ventress studied him with renewed interest. "You're direct. I appreciate that. Useful for survival, naturally. The galaxy grows more hostile to Force users by the day. Jedi are being hunted. The Separatists are failing. Change is coming, and I intend to be prepared." Her drink arrived, and she sipped it delicately before continuing. "I propose a temporary alignment of interests. The mining facility is extensive, and potential threats unknown. 3 Force-sensitive individuals working together improves our chances of success." "Who said I'm Force-sensitive?" Naruto challenged. Ventress smiled, cold and knowing. "You radiate power, boy. Not like a Jedi or Sith, but something different. Something old. I can taste it." Her eyes narrowed. "And I suspect that's precisely why. You're chasing myths about dimensional doorways." Ahsoka and Naruto exchanged another look, a silent communication born of weeks working closely together. "We'll consider it," Ahsoka said finally. "Excellent," Ventress purred. "I've already chartered a transport to the northern canyons. We leave in 1 hour." She stood gracefully. "Don't be late." As she sauntered away, Naruto leaned closer to Ahsoka. "You trust her?" "Not remotely," Ahsoka replied without hesitation. "But she's right about one thing. The more Force users we have exploring that mine, the better our chances of finding something useful. And keeping an eye on Ventress is safer than wondering what she's discovered without us." "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer," Naruto nodded. "We have the same saying in Konoha. Usually right before someone gets a kunai in their back." Ahsoka's lips twitched despite the tension. "Let's gather our equipment and meet her transport. But stay alert. Ventress has changed since her Sith days. But she's still dangerous. So are we," Naruto replied with quiet confidence. The northern canyons of Ord Mantell resembled a wound in the planet's surface, jagged gashes of red stone descending hundreds of meters below the desert plateau. Ancient mining operations had carved additional scars, artificial tunnels, collapsed shafts, and the skeletal remains of processing facilities clinging to the canyon walls like mechanical parasites. Ventress's transport, a rugged, sand-scarred speeder with reinforced plating, navigated the treacherous switchback path down the canyon side with practiced precision. Naruto sat behind Ahsoka, one hand gripping a safety rail while the other remained free for jutsu if needed. Ventress piloted with aggressive confidence, taking curves at speeds that would have sent a less skilled driver plummeting into the abyss. "Charming location," she commented dryly as they approached the main facility, a blocky duracrete structure embedded in the canyon wall. Industrial architecture at its finest. Despite her sarcasm, Naruto had noticed something during their journey, a subtle tension in Ventress's shoulders, a tightness around her eyes. The former Sith assassin was uneasy, though she concealed it well. "You feel it too," Ahsoka said, not a question but a statement. "The disturbance in the Force." Ventress cut the speeder's engines, allowing it to drift to a stop before the facility's massive blast doors. It's discordant, like voices arguing in different languages. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, reaching inward. Kurama, what do you sense? Asterisk. The nine tails stirred within their shared consciousness. Chaos. The energy here flows unnaturally, Kit. Pooling, spiraling, fighting against itself. Similar to when dimensional barriers weaken in our world. Like during the Fourth War. When Madara was attempting to connect dimensions. Asterisk. Similar, but different. Less controlled. More accidental. Be cautious. Naruto opened his eyes to find both women watching him expectantly. Kurama says the energy here is unstable, he reported. Like a dimensional weak point, but naturally occurring rather than engineered. Ventress arched an eyebrow. Kurama, my partner, Naruto said simply, offering no further explanation. To her credit, Ventress didn't press. Instead, she unholstered a compact datapad and approached the facility's access panel. Let's see if our nervous friend's codes work. The ancient panel sputtered to life as she interfaced with it, green text scrolling across its cracked display. After several tense moments, the massive doors began to retract with a bone-shaking groan of protesting metal. Stale air rushed outward, carrying the musty scent of abandonment, and something else, omething acrid and wrong that made Naruto's enhanced senses recoil. Decay, Ahsoka identified grimly. And not just machinery. Ventress unclipped a lightsaber from her belt but didn't activate it. Death isn't unexpected in abandoned mines. Scavengers, squatters, wildlife, many things die in forgotten places. This is recent, Naruto contradicted, his nose wrinkling. Within days, they entered cautiously, Ventress activating portable lights that cast harsh shadows across the facility's receiving bay. Once a bustling hub for processing raw materials, the chamber now stood eerily silent. Dust-covered equipment looming like monolithic monuments to forgotten industry. Naruto created 3 shadow clones without hand signs, a technique he perfected in recent weeks. Scout ahead, he instructed quietly. Basic reconnaissance formation. Disperse if threatened. The clones nodded and moved deeper into the facility, each taking a different passage. Ventress watched with undisguised interest. Fascinating. Not a force technique I recognize. It's not a force technique, Ahsoka explained, her lightsabers in hand but inactive. Naruto uses chakra, an energy similar to the force but utilized differently. Different galaxy, different rules, Naruto added with deliberate vagueness. Ventress's expression suggested she wasn't satisfied with this explanation, but she refrained. Rom further questions as they proceeded into the main processing chamber. The cavernous space contained massive machinery, crushers, sorters, conveyors, all frozen in time like mechanical fossils. The control room should be 1 level up, Ventress said, indicating a metal staircase clinging to the far wall. If any systems still function, we can. She stopped abruptly as one of Naruto's shadow CL1s appeared at the top of the staircase, its expression grim. Bodies, the clone reported. 3 of them, human, armed. Looks like they killed each other. Show us, Ahsoka directed. The clone led them up the stairs to a small control room overlooking the processing floor. As reported, 3 human bodies lay sprawled in positions of violence, one by the main console with a blaster wound through the chest. Another near the door with a vibroblade still clutched in his lifeless hand, and a third halfway between them, throat cut but fingers wrapped around a discharged blaster. No signs of other combatants, Ventress observed, examining the scene with clinical detachment. They turned on each other. Naruto crouched beside the nearest body, studying it with the practiced eye of someone who had seen violent death before. Recently, like I said, maybe 2 days ago, their equipment looks military grade, Ahsoka noted, examining a discarded backpack. Not miners or scavengers, mercenaries, Ventress concluded, well-equipped ones. Question is, who hired them? Before anyone could speculate further, a sudden surge of malevolent energy washed through the room, invisible but palpable, like a wave of cold, fetid water. Naruto staggered slightly, while both Ahsoka and Ventress instinctively activated their lightsabers, twin white blades for Ahsoka, curved crimson for Ventress. What the hell was that? Naruto demanded, reaching instinctively for a kunai. Ventress's expression had hardened, her earlier unease transformed into focused alertness. Dark side energy. Concentrated. Directed. Not just dark side, Ahsoka contradicted, her montrals twitching with sensitivity to the disturbance. Something else mingled with it. Something I've never felt before. Another of Naruto's shadow clones burst into the room, its normally confident expression replaced with urgent concern. Found something in the lower levels. Some kind of ritual chamber. Symbols carved into the floor, walls covered in writing. And a device. Like nothing I've seen before. Show us, Ventress commanded, her tone allowing no argument. They followed the clone deeper into the facility, NDING past the main mining levels into what appeared to be natural caverns beneath the manufactured structure. The air grew progressively colder, damper, with an electric quality that made the fine hairs on Naruto's arms stand on end. Be wary, Kit, Kurama's voice rumbled within his mind. This energy, it resonates with your darker emotions. Like negative chakra but more insidious. The dark side of the Force. Similar, yet different. In our world, negative chakra feeds on hatred, anger, despair. This, it doesn't just feed. It corrupts. It transforms. The warning HTENED Naruto's alertness as they entered a large natural chamber that had been modified extensively. Just as the clone had described, elaborate symbols had been carved into the stone floor in a complex pattern surrounding a central platform. The walls bore line after line of cramped writing in a language none of them recognized. And on the platform stood a device that defied easy categorization, part mechanical, part crystalline. With components that seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. At its center pulsed a crimson crystal the size of a fist, suspended within a framework of silver-black metal. "What is this place?" Ahsoka whispered, her voice barely audible yet seeming to echo unnaturally. Ventress approached the wall inscriptions, studying them with narrowed eyes. Some form of ancient Sith script. But dialectically different, older, perhaps, or from a splinter tradition. "You can read it?" Naruto asked. "Fragments," Ventress admitted. "My training included some study of Sith languages. This mentions veils between realms and pathways through shadow." Naruto felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the cavern's temperature. "Dimensional travel. Or something approximating it," Ventress agreed. "Though I doubt the ancient Sith conceptualized other dimensions the way you might." Ahsoka had circled the central platform, careful not to disturb the carved symbols. "This device is recent. The technology is advanced. Perhaps even beyond current Republic or Separatist capabilities. Look at the crystal," Naruto pointed out. "It's pulsing in time with something." They all fell silent. Sensing rather than hearing a subtle rhythm emanating from the crystal, a heartbeat, or perhaps a countdown. "We should document everything, then leave," Ahsoka decided. "This requires careful study, not improvisation." Ventress didn't appear to hear her. The former Sith had moved closer to the device, her eyes reflecting the crimson pulsations of the crystal. "It's calling to something, reaching out across a barrier." "Ventress," Ahsoka said sharply. "Step back from the device." For a moment, it seemed Ventress might disregard the warning. Then she blinked, as if coming out of a trance, and retreated several paces. "Yes, caution is warranted." Naruto had begun to circle the chamber, his shinobi instincts detecting something out of place. Someone else was here recently. Multiple someones. He pointed to scuff marks on the dusty floor, barely visible in the dim light. They observed whatever happened here, then retreated in a hurry. Before they could investigate further, the third shadow clone appeared at the chamber entrance, its expression urgent. Movement outside the facility. Multiple armed individuals approaching the main entrance. Professional formation. Military precision. "Our mercenary friends have reinforcements," Ventress surmised. "How inconvenient. We need to move," Ahsoka urged. "Whatever this place is, whatever that device does, we can't risk it falling into unknown hands." Naruto made a swift decision. "I'll create more shadow clones to gather as much data as possible, images of the inscriptions, measurements of the symbol patterns. Readings from the device. We'll need everything if we're going to understand what this place is." "Agreed," Ahsoka said. "Ventress and I will delay the newcomers. Give you time to document everything. Don't engage directly unless necessary," Ventress advised with unexpected pragmatism. Information is our priority, not conflict. The three split up. Ahsoka and Ventress heading toward the upper levels while Naruto created a dozen shadow clones that immediately began a systematic documentation of the chamber. He moved to the device itself, studying it without touching, trying to discern its purpose. Kurama, any insights? This crystal, it feels almost alive. Not sentient, but responsive. Like it's both transmitter and receiver. The inner GY signature reminds me of the dimensional rupture that brought us here, but more controlled. Could it be used to create a path home? Perhaps, with proper understanding. But this wasn't built for safe passage, Kit. This was built to bring something through. Something specific. Naruto frowned at the implication. A summoning device. In a manner of speaking. But what manner of being requires such elaborate preparation to call forth? A distant explosion shook dust from the cavern ceiling, interrupting their internal dialogue. The confrontation had begun sooner than expected. Naruto gestured to his clones, who redoubled their documentation efforts with increased urgency. Above, the sounds of battle intensified, blaster fire, the distinctive hum of lightsabers, shouts and screams. Naruto felt a twinge of concern for Ahsoka, though he knew her capabilities well enough to trust she could handle herself. Ventress remained an unknown quantity, ally of convenience, but for how long? Suddenly, the crimson crystal's pulsations accelerated, its glow intensifying until it bathed the entire chamber in bloody light. The carved symbols on the floor began to emanate a contrasting blue-white radiance, creating a disorienting visual effect as the opposing energies interacted. Everyone out! Naruto shouted to his clones. Finish and disperse. The clones complied instantly, completing their assigned tasks before deliberately dispelling themselves to return their gathered information directly to Naruto's consciousness. The influx of data, visual, tactile, sensory, momentarily overwhelmed him, forcing him to brace against the platform for support. In that moment of vulnerability, his hand brushed the edge of the device. Pain lanced through his body, white-hot and all-consuming, as though every nerve ending had been simultaneously ignited. Naruto's vision swam, reality seeming to fold and unfold around him like origami crafted by unseen hands. The chamber disappeared, replaced by a kaleidoscopic tunnel of fragmented images. The battlefield where he'd last stood in his own world, Madara's triumphant face as the dimensional jutsu activated. Konoha in flames, his friends fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Sasuke, eyes bleeding from overuse of the Mangekyo Sharingan, calling his name as a rift in reality swallowed Naruto whole. Sakura's tears, Kakashi's shocked expression, Tsunade's despairing cry. And something else. A hooded figure watching from the shadows, yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction as chaos engulfed the shinobi world. The visions shifted, accelerated. A vast chamber of dark stone, where robed figures gathered before a throne. A planet of endless city, its lowest levels never seeing sunlight. A temple in flames, children cut down by a figure wielding a blue lightsaber. Ahsoka, older, battle-worn, facing a masked warrior whose mechanical breathing filled the air with dread. With a gasping cry, Naruto tore his hand away from the device. The visions vanished, reality reasserting itself with nauseating abruptness. He staggered back, chest heaving, cold sweat beading on his forehead. Naruto. Kurama's voice roared in his mind, filled with uncharacteristic concern. What happened? Your chakra network fluctuated wildly. I nearly lost connection with you. I don't know what I saw. The past, the future, other dimensions. Whatever it wasn't natural. That device connected to something beyond normal perception. And it left a residue on your chakra. Dark, cold, alien. Before Naruto could process this warning, a new presence entered the chamber. Not Ahsoka or Ventress, but a tall, aristocratic human male with silver-streaked dark hair and a precisely trimmed beard. He wore the formal attire of core world nobility, incongruous in this environment, and carried himself with the confident authority of someone accustomed to power. Fascinating, the newcomer remarked, his cultured voice carrying the same Cyrano accent as Ventress. When my agents reported unusual force activity in this sector, I hardly expected to find someone from another dimension entirely. Naruto straightened, instinctively shifting into a combat stance. Count Dooku, I presume. The separatist leader inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the recognition with aristocratic grace. You have the advantage of me, young man. You know my name, but I do not know yours. Naruto Uzumaki. Not that it matters to you. On the contrary, Dooku countered smoothly, it matters a great deal. Individuals who can traverse dimensions are exceedingly rare and valuable. My master would be most interested in your abilities. Your master, Naruto repeated. The words carrying weight as he recalled Ahsoka's briefings. Darth Sidious, the puppet master hiding in plain sight. Something dangerous flickered in Dooku's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or irritation at Naruto's knowledge. You are well informed for an interdimensional traveler. I suspect your companion, young Tano, has been quite forthcoming about our galaxy's political situation. Where is she? Naruto demanded, tension evident in every line of his body. And Ventress, engaged with my commandos, last I observed, Dooku replied with casual indifference. Capable warriors, both of them. They may even survive the encounter. His gaze shifted to the pulsing device. This, however, is my primary interest. A prototype based on ancient Sith technology, designed to pierce the veil between realities. We placed it here months ago to gather baseline readings, but your arrival seems to have activated it fully. Understanding dawned with chilling clarity. The mercenaries, your men, they didn't kill each other by accident. A regrettable side effect, Dooku acknowledged without remorse. Exposure to interdimensional energy affects different minds in different ways. Some become violent, others catatonic. A problem we hope to solve with further research. Using me as a test subject. Naruto's voice hardened. Not happening. Dooku smiled thinly. Your cooperation, while preferred, is not strictly necessary. With fluid grace, he unclipped and activated a curved-hilt lightsaber, its crimson blade casting sinister shadows across his aristocratic features. The device has already sampled your unique energy signature. Analysis of your remains would provide additional valuable data. Naruto had faced enough powerful enemies to recognize the dangerous combination before I am. Supreme confidence backed by genuine skill. Dooku was no blowhard, but a warrior with decades of experience, first as a Jedi Master, then as a Sith Lord. You're not the first arrogant old man who thought he could use me as a guinea pig, Naruto stated flatly, chakra beginning to swirl visibly around his form. It didn't work out well for Orochimaru either. Before Dooku could respond, Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. A dozen clones materialized throughout the chamber, surrounding Dooku from all angles. The Count's eyes widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself, before settling into calculated assessment. Interesting technique, he commented, seeming genuinely intrigued despite the tactical disadvantage. Not force-based, yet similarly effective. Perhaps a demonstration of your capabilities is in order before we conclude our business. He moved with astonishing speed for his age, lightsaber becoming a crimson blur as he cut down 3 clones in a single flowing movement. The remaining clones attacked in coordinated pairs, employing taijutsu techniques adapted for lightsaber combat, staying inside the blade's effective range. Targeting Dooku's arms and legs rather than his well-defended torso. Naruto himself held back momentarily, gauging Dooku's style. The Count fought with precision and economy of movement, his bladework elegant yet lethal. He supplemented his swordsmanship with force techniques, pushing clones away when they got too close, anticipating attacks before they were fully executed. When a particularly aggressive clone managed to land a glancing kick to Dooku's shoulder, the Sith responded with a surge of force lightning, crackling blue-white energy that engulfed and dispersed the clone instantly. That technique, Naruto communicated to Kurama. It's like lightning release jutsu, but wilder, less controlled. And fueled by darker emotions, Kurama observed. Be careful, Kit, old affect you differently than your shadow clones. As the battle progressed, Naruto noticed something troubling. His connection to natural energy felt distorted in this chamber, making Sage Mode difficult to access. The oppressive dark side presence seemed to interfere with the balanced chakra flow required for the technique. Adapting quickly, he shifted strategies. Everyone back, He commanded his remaining clones, who immediately put distance between themselves and Dooku. The Count watched with calculating eyes as Naruto held out his hand, blue chakra swirling into a compact sphere. "Ah," Dooku remarked, "your signature technique, I presume." "One of them," Naruto confirmed grimly. Rasengan. He launched forward with explosive speed, the spiraling chakra sphere aimed directly at Dooku's chest. The Sith Lord raised his lightsaber to intercept, seemingly confident in the energy blade's ability to disrupt any physical attack. What happened instead surprised both combatants. When Rasengan met lightsaber, neither dissipated as expected. Instead, the chakra sphere began absorbing energy from the blade, growing brighter and more unstable with each second of contact. Dooku's expression shifted from confident to concerned as he felt his lightsaber's power being drained into Naruto's technique. With a sound like thunder contained in a bottle, the modified Rasengan exploded outward, sending both warriors flying in opposite directions. Naruto crashed into the chamber wall, while Dooku collided with the central platform, nearly toppling the dimensional device. "Most unexpected," Dooku commented as he regained his footing, singed and disheveled but far from defeated. "Your energy and the Force interact in ways that defy conventional understanding." Naruto rose more slowly, the explosion having caught him by surprise. A trickle of blood ran from a cut above his eye where he'd struck the stone wall, but the wound was already closing thanks to Kurama's influence. "That was just the warm-up," he declared, wiping blood from his face with the back of his hand. "Ready for round two." Dooku's response was not what he expected. Rather than re-engaging, the Count activated his lightsaber and stepped back, his manner shifting from combative to evaluative. "Your potential exceeds my initial assessment," he stated with clinical detachment. "Raw power comparable to a Jedi Master, yet wilder. Less constrained by doctrine. You would make a formidable ally, or a worthy apprentice." The suggestion hit Naruto like a physical blow. "Apprentice? Are you serious?" "Entirely," Dooku confirmed. "The Jedi would fear your abilities, seek to control or neutralize you. The Republic would study you like a specimen. Only the Sith understand true power and its proper application. From what Ahsoka's told me, the Sith understand betrayal and domination," Naruto countered. "Not exactly selling points. Ahsoka Tano views our galaxy through the lens of her Jedi indoctrination," Dooku dismissed. "Even having left the Order, she clings to their simplistic morality. The Jedi fear passion, emotion, attachment, the very things that make life worth living." He gestured expansively. "The Sith embrace the fullness of existence. We recognize that true strength comes from engaging with one's emotions, not suppressing them." Despite himself, Naruto felt an unexpected resonance with certain aspects of Dooku's words. The Jedi philosophy, as Ahsoka had described it, had struck him as unnecessarily rigid, denying attachment, forbidding love, suppressing anger rather than channeling it constructively. "You hesitate," Dooku observed shrewdly. "Because you recognize truth when you hear it. Your power doesn't come from emotional detachment, does it? It comes from Scion. Your determination to protect those you care about, your anger at injustice, your desire to prove yourself." "Be wary, Naruto," Kurama cautioned. His words contain half-truths wrapped in manipulation. Like Madara's silver tongue. The comparison jolted Naruto from his momentary contemplation. "You're right, he's trying to find leverage." Nice speech, Naruto said aloud, his voice hardening. "But I've met manipulative bastards before. You're selling freedom while offering chains." "No thanks." Dooku's expression cooled. "A pity. I had hoped you might be reasoned with." His gaze shifted to the dimensional device, which had begun pulsing more rapidly during their confrontation. "No matter. The prototype has gathered sufficient data from your presence. When refined, it will allow controlled access between dimensions, including yours." Alarm shot through Naruto at the implication. "You want to invade my world." "Invasion implies conquest," Dooku corrected smoothly. "We merely seek expansion. New resources, new knowledge, new potential allies. And if my people refuse to be resources." Dooku's silence was answer enough. Rage bubbled within Naruto's chest, not the hot, impulsive anger of his youth, but something colder, more focused. The thought of Konoha, already fighting for survival against Madara, suddenly facing technological threats from another dimension entirely. The rage touched something inside him, something dormant yet responsive. Not Kurama's chakra, which had become familiar over years of partnership, but something else. Something that felt disturbingly like the energy permeating this chamber. Dark side energy. It whispered to him, offering power without the usual constraints of chakra control or natural balance. Raw, immediate, oceanally fueled power that could protect his precious people from threats like Dooku and his master. Naruto. Kurama's voice cut through the whispers. This is what I warned you about. The RK side resonates with your negative emotions, amplifies them. It feels familiar because all beings capable of hatred share this potential, but it's more seductive here, more accessible. The warning reached Naruto just as he felt himself beginning to draw on the unfamiliar power. With conscious effort, he redirected, reaching instead for the familiar flow of his own chakra, reinforced by Kurama's. Golden energy flared around him, not the red of Kurama's raw power nor the corrupting influence of dark side energy, but the balanced harmony they'd achieved together. His eyes shifted to orange-red with cross-shaped pupils, whisker marks deepening as he entered Biju mode. Dooku took an involuntary step back, lightsaber raising defensively as he sensed the dramatic power shift. Most impressive, he acknowledged. Genuine respect in his tone despite the situation. Your control speaks of extensive training and discipline. Something the Sith wouldn't understand, came Ahsoka's voice from the chamber entrance. She stood framed in the doorway, her white lightsabers casting their pure light against the crimson glow of the crystal device. Blood from a minor cut stained her left montral, but her stance was steady, determined. Ah, young Tano, Dooku greeted her with mocking courtesy. I wondered when you would join us. And Ventress, has my former apprentice fallen already? Handling your remaining commandos, Ahsoka replied tersely, moving to stand beside Naruto. Her eyes widened slightly at his transformed appearance, but she adapted quickly, positioning herself to complement his fighting stance. The real question is why a separatist leader is personally investigating an abandoned mine on a backwater planet. I believe your companion has already deduced the answer, Dooku replied, gesturing toward Naruto. Dimensional travel, the next frontier in our understanding of the Force. Imagine it, Tano, entire realms beyond our own, each with unique resources and knowledge. The side that masters this technology first will win not just the current war, but all wars to come. Always thinking about power, Ahsoka observed with disgust. Says the former apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi's weapon of choice, Dooku countered smoothly. We merely acknowledge openly what the Republic conceals beneath platitudes about peace and justice. While they spoke, Naruto had been extending his enhanced senses throughout the chamber, analyzing the dimensional device with greater clarity than before. In Biju mode, he could perceive energy patterns invisible to normal GHT, including the connections between the device, the crystal at its heart, and the carved symbols surrounding the platform. Kurama, this setup, it reminds me of something. A ceiling array, the nine tails confirmed. Not identical to those in our world, but functionally similar. The symbols channel and direct energy, while the crystal serves as both power source and focal point. So if we disrupt the symbols, the array loses coherence, and the device should deactivate. But be careful, uncontrolled release of that much energy could be catastrophic. Naruto shared this insight with Ahsoka through a quick, quiet exchange while Dooku continued his ideological justifications. Her eyes widened with understanding, then narrowed with determination as she gave an almost imperceptible nod. Enough talk, Naruto declared, interrupting Dooku mid-sentence. You're not getting this technology, and you're not threatening my world. With that declaration, he and Ahsoka moved in perfect synchronization. Ahsoka launched herself toward Dooku, lightsabers forming a dazzling defensive pattern that forced the Sith Lord to engage fully, while Naruto created a squad of Dao clones that immediately began disrupting the carved symbols on the floor, scratching through lines, altering angles, breaking the patterns, continuity. No, Dooku shouted, recognizing their strategy. He unleashed a powerful force push that sent Ahsoka skidding backward, then directed a barrage of force lightning toward Naruto's clones. Naruto himself intercepted the lightning, his Biju mode. chakra cloak absorbing and partially neutralizing the dark side energy. It still hurt. A burning, invasive pain unlike anything he'd experienced before, but he endured, allowing his clones to continue their work. The dimensional device began to react immediately, its pulsations becoming erratic, the crimson crystal flickering like a dying heartbeat. Alarming cracks appeared in its surface, leaking energized particles that sparked and sizzled against the surrounding framework. "You fool," Dooku snarled, abandoning his aristocratic composure as he realized the danger. Without proper deactivation protocols, the energy release could tear this entire facility apart. "Then I suggest you leave," Ahsoka retorted, regaining her footing. "While you still can." Dooku's eyes darted between his opponents, the deteriorating device, and the chamber entrance, calculating odds, weighing values, making the cold strategic assessment that had kept him alive through decades of intrigue and conflict. "This is not our final encounter," he promised ominously before backing toward the exit. "The knowledge you've demonstrated today only confirms your value to my master. We will meet again, Naruto Uzumaki." With that, he turned and departed with measured haste, not fleeing, in his mind, but making a tactical withdrawal. "Should we go after him?" Naruto asked, maintaining his Biju mode as the device's instability increased. Ahsoka shook her head. "The device is the priority. If it's as dangerous as he claims." Before she could finish, a tremor shook the chamber, dust and small stones raining from the ceiling as the crystal's color shifted from crimson to a sickly purple. The air itself seemed to warp around it, reality becoming thin and permeable as dimensional barriers weakened. "It's destabilizing completely," Naruto realized. "We need to contain the explosion." "I can help with that," Kurama offered. "Channel my chakra into a containment barrier, similar to how we contained B's tailed beast bomb during training." Naruto nodded, concentrating his golden chakra arms extended from his back, forming a dome around the device. "Ahsoka, get clear. I can absorb most of the energy, but not all of it." "I'm not leaving you," she objected, even as the chamber's tremors intensified. "Not alone, at least," came Ventress's voice as she appeared in the doorway, her clothing inged and torn from battle but her composure intact. "What manner of catastrophe have you two triggered now?" "Dimensional device overloading," Ahsoka explained tersely. "Naruto's containing it, but we need to evacuate." "You don't say," Ventress remarked dryly, surveying the deteriorating situation. After a moment's consideration, she sighed with theatrical resignation. "Very well, I suppose allowing you both to be atomized would deprive me of potentially valuable allies." To Naruto's surprise, Ventress moved to the opposite side of the device and extended her hands, crimson lightsaber deactivated but returned to her belt. Through his enhanced perception, he could see her drawing on the Force, not the corruptive dark side energy that had tempted him earlier, but something more controlled, disciplined. A secondary containment field began to form, interweaving with Naruto's chakra dome. Where the energies met, they didn't conflict but complemented, Force and chakra harmonizing in a way that strengthened both. "I didn't expect you to help," Ahsoka admitted, moving to complete the triangle around the device, adding her own Force abilities to the containment effort. "Don't become sentimental, Tano," Ventress replied without taking her eyes off the device. "Self-preservation remains my primary motivation. Besides," a rare, genuine smile briefly curved her lips, "I've developed an interest in dimensional theory. Hard to pursue that research if this prototype obliterates us all." The three worked in focused silence as the device approached critical failure. Through their combined efforts, Naruto's chakra, Ahsoka's light side Force techniques, and Ventress's controlled application of darker energies, they created a layered containment field that allowed the dimensional energy to implode rather than explode. When the crystal finally shattered, the release was anticlimactic, a sudden, silent collapse followed by a vacuum-like implosion that pulled the device's components in on themselves, leaving nothing but a scorched depression in the platform. Naruto released his Biju mode with a weary exhalation, golden energy receding to reveal his normal appearance, though with eyes that held new shadows. New understanding of the dangers unique to this galaxy. "Well," Ventress said into the ensuing silence, "that was educational." Ahsoka deactivated her lightsabers, pinged them to her belt with hands that trembled slightly from exertion. Dooku escaped, with data about the device and about Naruto. Unfortunate but expected, Ventress acknowledged. Count Dooku Ra. Rely undertakes personal missions without contingencies. Whatever knowledge he gained, he's already transmitted to secure separatist channels. Then we need to understand it better than they do, Naruto determined. His voice carrying the steel of decision. The inscriptions on these walls, the symbol patterns, my shadow clones documented everything. With proper analysis, we might decipher how this technology works. To what end? Ventress inquired, her silver eyes sharp with interest. Creating your own dimensional portal. Returning to your world. That, Naruto confirmed, and preventing anyone here from threatening my home. Ventress studied him thoughtfully. An ambitious goal. One that would benefit from resources, expertise, and diverse perspectives on the Force. Ahsoka's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Are you offering to help? I'm proposing an arrangement of mutual benefit, Ventress clarified. I possess knowledge of Sith archaeology and ancient texts that neither of you can access. You have, she gestured toward Naruto, unique insights into dimensional travel and energy manipulation. Together, we might achieve what none of us could individually. A partnership, Naruto summarized. Of convenience, Ventress agreed. For now, Ahsoka and Naruto exchanged a look, a silent communication that had become second nature during their weeks together. Mutual wariness, but also recognition of potential advantages. We'll consider it, Ahsoka said finally, echoing her earlier response to Ventress's initial proposal. The former Sith assassin inclined her head slightly. Do that. In the meantime, I suggest we depart before Dooku returns with reinforcements. This facility has yielded its primary secrets, and lingering invites unnecessary complications. As they made their way back through the abandoned mine, Naruto found himself walking alongside Ventress while Ahsoka scouted ahead. The pale woman moved with lethal grace despite her battle-worn appearance. Her Force signature a complex tapestry of disciplined darkness and something else, something less corrupted than Dooku's presence had been. You felt it, didn't you? She asked abruptly, her voice pitched for his ears alone. When you confronted Dooku, the call of the dark side. Naruto considered denying it, then decided on honesty. Yes, and yet you resisted, Ventress observed, genuine curiosity in her tone. Few manage that on their first significant exposure. Even fewer when already harboring such pain and anger. I've had practice, Naruto replied simply. The Nine Tails, Ama, spent years trying to corrupt me through negative emotions. You learn to recognize the difference between your own darkness and external influences. Ventress's lips curved in a small, sardonic smile. Most interesting. You speak of this entity as though it's separate from you, yet also part of you. It's complicated. I imagine so. She fell silent for several steps before continuing. He Jedi would tell you to suppress such darkness completely. The Sith would urge you to embrace it without reservation. Both are fools. Naruto glanced at her with renewed interest. And what would you suggest? Understanding. Ventress replied, surprising him with her sincerity. Know your darkness intimately. Its contours, its triggers, its strengths and limitations. Only then can you control it rather than being controlled by it. The advice resonated unexpectedly with Naruto's own journey toward partnership with Kurama, moving from fear and suppression to understanding and cooperation. You're not what I expected, he admitted. From Ahsoka's descriptions, Tano knew me when I served Dooku, Ventress interrupted. People change, particularly after betrayal by those they trusted. Ask her about that sometime. Before Naruto could respond, they reached the facility's entrance, where Ahsoka waited with evident impatience. Outside, the canyon was bathed in the reddish glow of Ord Mantell's setting sun. Shadows lengthening like reaching fingers across the rocky landscape. Dooku's ship departed, she reported. No sign of remaining commandos, but we should assume they've called for backup. We need to leave immediately. Ventress gestured toward her sand-scarred speeder, still parked where they'd left it. My vessel is hidden in a cave system 3 kilometers north. Large enough for all of us. If you're amenable to temporary shared accommodations. The offer hung in the air, not just transportation, but the first step toward the partnership she'd proposed. Naruto looked to Ahsoka, whose expression remained guarded but not outright rejecting. Then to Ventress, whose calculating eyes held neither warmth nor hostility, just pragmatic assessment of mutual interests. Let's go, he decided. We can discuss terms along the way. As they boarded the speeder, Naruto cast one final glance at the mining facility, at the place where he'd touched alien technology and glimpsed possible futures. Where he'd felt the seductive pull of this galaxy's unique darkness, where new alliances had begun to form. The line between friend and enemy, ally and adversary, had never seemed more blurred. Yet somehow, that felt appropriate for a traveler between worlds, someone who existed at the intersection of different realities, different philosophies, different conceptions of power and purpose. Whatever path lay ahead, Naruto knew with certainty that nothing would be as simple as the light and dark distinctions the Jedi and Sith clung to. His journey would unfold in the shadows between, just as it always had. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Echoes of the Kyuubi. The Coruscant skyline blazed with artificial brilliance against the night sky, countless lights defining the impossible topography of the galactic capital. The planet-wide metropolis never truly slept. Even at this late hour, air traffic moved in regulated streams between towering structures, while the lower levels pulsed with the restless energy of a trillion beings pursuing their various purposes. From her apartment balcony in the diplomatic quarter, Senator Ryo Chuchi could see the distant silhouette of the Jedi Temple, its 5 spires standing as silent sentinels above the urban expanse. The young Pantoran woman rested her hands on the balcony's edge, the metal cool beneath her palms, her violet hair stirring slightly in the recycled breeze from nearby atmospheric processors. "They're still there," she murmured, golden eyes fixed on the temple. But for how much longer? Though she spoke to herself, he question reflected growing concerns throughout the Senate. The Jedi Order, once revered as guardians of peace and justice, had become increasingly controversial as the Clone Wars dragged on. Military failures, civilian casualties, and questionable political decisions had eroded public confidence in ways that would have been unthinkable 3 years earlier. Ryo understood this erosion better than most. At 25, she was among the youngest senators in the Galactic Republic, representing Pantora with a progressive idealism that her more cynical colleagues often dismissed as naivety. There was nothing naive about her assessment of the Republic's deterioration, or the Jedi's complicity in it. A discreet chime from her datapad interrupted her contemplation. The message that appeared bore no official authentication. Transmitted through channels outside regular diplomatic protocols. Confirmation received. Arrival estimated within 36 hours. Prepare secure meeting location as discussed. Ryo allowed herself a small, tight smile. Finally, movement after weeks of careful arrangements and encrypted communications. The mysterious informant known only as Fulcrum had proven reliable before, providing evidence of separatist infiltration within the Senate and warning of military operations that threatened civilian populations in the Outer Rim. This meeting, however, promised something different. Not tactical information or political intelligence, but a potential ally whose unique perspective might help navigate the treacherous waters ahead. As she deleted the message and secured her datapad, Ryo's thoughts returned to the Jedi Temple on the horizon. So much power concentrated in so few hands, guided by doctrines that increasingly seemed disconnected from the galaxy they claimed to serve. "Perhaps," she whispered, "it's time for something new." 300 levels below the gleaming towers of the Senate District, the underworld market throbbed with frenetic commerce. Here, where sunlight never penetrated and air quality regulations existed mainly as distant rumors, beings from across the galaxy traded goods both legal and illicit beneath the harsh glare of aging lumipanels. Naruto moved through the crowded marketplace with practiced ease, his shinobi training allowing him to blend despite his naturally striking appearance. A dark hood concealed his blonde hair, while loose clothing in muted browns and grays disguised his athletic build. Only his whisker-marked cheeks remained partially visible, though in this melting pot of species and mutations. Such features hardly warranted a second glance. 2 months had passed since the encounter with Dooku at the mining facility. 2 months of careful movement between systems, gathering information, and deepening his understanding of this galaxy's complex political landscape. 2 months of training with both Ahsoka and, surprisingly, Ventress, developing techniques that combined chakra manipulation with force applications in ways none of them had previously considered. And throughout it all, Kurama's consciousness had been evolving, integrating with the force in unprecedented ways. "Eyes on our target," Naruto murmured, his voice barely audible above the market's cacophony. Through their shared communications device, Ahsoka's voice replied, "Northeast quadrant, moving between the textile stalls. 3 bodyguards, all armed." The informant was right. He's here to make a deal. The target, a mid-level separatist agent named Duran Kess, had unwittingly led them to Coruscant after they intercepted communications regarding a planned assassination within the Senate. Their goal was not to apprehend him but to track his movements, identify his contacts, and uncover the full scope of the conspiracy. Naruto adjusted his direction, maintaining distance while keeping Kess in his peripheral vision. The underworld provided perfect hunting grounds, crowded enough for concealment but open enough for surveillance. "Any sign of our other friend?" he asked, referring to Ventress, who had separated from them earlier to pursue her own angle of investigation. "Nothing yet," Ahsoka replied. "You know her. She appears when it serves her purposes." The mild exasperation in her tone brought a small smile to Naruto's lips. The uneasy alliance with Ventress had proven surprisingly durable, though not without friction. The former Sith assassin operated according to her own inscrutable agenda, occasionally vanishing for days before returning with valuable information or resources. Her motives remained opaque, but her actions had thus far aligned with their interests. "Something's wrong," Kurama's voice rumbled within Naruto's mind, interrupting his thoughts. "The energy flow here is disturbed." Naruto frowned, pausing beside a vendor selling mechanical components. "Disturbed how?" "Like ripples in still water when a large predator moves beneath the surface. Something powerful in the force is approaching. Something trained to conceal its presence, but unable to hide completely from me." The warning heightened Naruto's alertness. Over the past months, Kurama had demonstrated an uncanny ability to sense force disturbances that even trained force users like Ahsoka sometimes missed. The Nine Tails seemed to exist partially outside the traditional force paradigm, allowing him to perceive its patterns from a unique perspective. "Ahsoka," Naruto murmured into his communicator, "Kurama senses something approaching." "Powerful force user, concealed." "Acknowledged," she replied tersely. "Could be one of the hunters we've heard about. Maintain your cover, I'm repositioning." The hunters had emerged in recent weeks, force-sensitive operatives who tracked down and eliminate Jedi who had survived the initial purges following mysterious events at the Jedi Temple. Though Ahsoka was no longer officially a Jedi, her force signature and connection to the Order made her a potential target. Naruto continued his careful movement through the market, adjusting his path to maintain visual contact with Kess while extending his senses outward. After months of training with Ahsoka and Ventress, his natural chakra sensitivity had begun to interface with the Force in limited ways, not manipulating it as they did, but perceiving its currents and disturbances. "There," Kurama indicated, directing Naruto's attention toward a hooded figure moving with too perfect casualness through the crowd. "Notice the gait, measured, controlled, and the way others unconsciously move aside, responding to subtle force suggestion." Naruto observed without appearing to look directly at the newcomer. The figure, humanoid but of indeterminate species beneath concealing robes, moved with the economy of a trained combatant. More tellingly, they were converging on the same path as their target, Kess. "We've got competition," Naruto reported quietly. "Someone else is tracking Kess. Force-sensitive, skilled." Before Ahsoka could respond, the marketplace's rhythm changed subtly. Security droids appeared at key intersections, their programmed movements too coordinated for routine patrol. Then, doors began closing stalls with unusual haste. Patrons sensed the shift, conversations dropping in volume as wary eyes tracked the developing situation. Kess noticed too. The separatist agent's posture stiffened, his bodyguards moving into defensive formation around him. His head turned, scanning the crowd with growing alarm, before he suddenly changed direction, heading toward a service corridor that would lead to the lower levels. The hooded figure immediately adjusted course to intercept. "They're moving," Naruto reported, abandoning his pretense of casual browsing. Kess is spooked, heading for the south service corridor. "Our mysterious friend is in pursuit." "I see them," Ahsoka confirmed. "Cut through the food court and head them off at junction S12. I'll follow directly. We need to know who this new player is before we decide how to proceed." Naruto complied, his shinobi training allowing him to move swiftly without drawing undue attention. He navigated through packed tables of diners consuming questionable cuisine, vaulted a service counter when the path was blocked, and emerged into a dimly lit corridor just as Kes and his bodyguards rounded the far corner. The Separatist agent froze upon seeing Naruto, his hand instinctively moving toward a concealed weapon. "Out of my way," he barked, his voice carrying the clipped accent of an inner rim education despite his outer rim appearance. Naruto raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Easy. I'm not your problem." He nodded past them. "But whoever that is might be." Kes half turned, allowing him to keep both Naruto and the corridor behind in view. His bodyguards, professional mercenaries by their stance and equipment, had already drawn their blasters, creating a protective triangle around their employer. A hooded figure appeared at the corridor's far end, stopping at a measured distance. For a moment, tableau held, Kes and his guards in the center, Naruto at one end of the corridor, the mysterious pursuer at the other. Then the stranger's hand moved to their belt, drawing and igniting a lightsaber that bathed the dingy passage in crimson light. "Sith," one bodyguard gasped, firing instinctively. The red blade moved with hypnotic precision, deflecting blaster bolts back at their sources. 2 guards fell immediately, smoking holes in their chest armor. The third managed to activate a personal shield before dragging Kes behind a structural column. "Run!" the guard shouted, firing suppressive shots that the lightsaber wielder deflected with contemptuous ease. Kes needed no encouragement. He sprinted toward Naruto, clearly calculating that an unarmed stranger presented less immediate danger than a lightsaber-wielding attacker. As the Separatist agent passed, Naruto made a split-second decision. His hand shot out, catching Kes by the collar and swinging him against the wall with controlled force. "Who's trying to kill you?" he demanded, holding the man immobile with one hand. "Imperial Inquisitor," Kes gasped, fear overriding any question of why he was answering. "They found out. The Operation Senate." His explanation terminated abruptly as a lightsaber blade erupted from his chest. The Inquisitor had crossed the distance with force-enhanced speed, impaling Kes from behind while simultaneously using telekinesis to slam the remaining bodyguard into the ceiling with bone-crushing force. Naruto released the dying man and leapt backward, putting distance between himself and the attacker. As Kes crumpled to the floor, the Inquisitor deactivated their lightsaber, head tilting with predatory curiosity. "You're not with him," the Inquisitor observed, voice modulated through a mask to become androgynous and slightly mechanical. "Yet you're not fleeing. Interesting." Naruto maintained a ready stance without drawing a weapon. "Just a bystander who made a bad decision. Nothing interesting about it." "Oh, I disagree." The Inquisitor took a step forward, head tilting to the opposite side in a disconcertingly inhuman motion. "You move like a warrior. Your reaction time exceeds normal human capacity. And there's something unusual about your force presence." "I get that a lot," Naruto replied, mind racing through options. He could feel Ahsoka approaching through a parallel corridor. She would emerge behind the Inquisitor within moments. The situation required careful handling. They needed information about the assassination plot, but confronting an Imperial agent directly risked exposing their presence on Coruscant. The Inquisitor ignited their lightsaber again, the crimson blade humming with malevolent energy. "The Empire appreciates those with special talents. You could be evaluated for potential service rather than eliminated as a witness." "Generous offer," Naruto acknowledged with deliberate nonchalance. "But I prefer independence." "Independence is an illusion," the Inquisitor stated flatly. "One the Empire is systematically correcting throughout the galaxy. Now, whatever ultimatum the Imperial agent planned to deliver remained unspoken as a silver lightsaber blade suddenly emerged from their shoulder. The Inquisitor staggered forward, momentarily destabilized by Ahsoka's surprise attack, before whirling to face this new threat with remarkable recovery. Ahsoka stood in the connecting doorway, her twin lightsabers casting their silvery white illumination to counter the Inquisitor's red. She had abandoned her disguise, her distinctive montrals and facial markings now fully visible. "Ahsoka Tano," the Inquisitor remarked, an unmistakable note of satisfaction entering their modulated voice. "The apprentice without a master. Lord Vader will be pleased when I deliver your lightsabers to him." Something in the Inquisitor's words caused Ahsoka to falter momentarily, A barely perceptible hesitation that nonetheless suggested the name, Vader, held significance. She recovered instantly, her blades moving into a defensive position. "You'll have to take them first," she challenged. The Inquisitor laughed, a cold, artificial sound through the mosque's vocoder. "With pleasure." What followed was a lightsaber duel of extraordinary intensity. The Inquisitor pressed forward with aggressive Form V techniques, forcing Ahsoka to give ground initially. Her response demonstrated the fluid adaptability she had developed since leaving the Jedi Order, incorporating elements of multiple lightsaber forms rather than adhering to any single tradition. Naruto circled the combatants, seeking an opening to assist without disrupting Ahsoka's rhythm. His shadow clone technique would be most effective, but creating multiples in such confined quarters risked distracting Ahsoka as much as helping her. The duel drove them back toward the marketplace, lightsabers carving glowing arcs through the dimly lit corridor. The Inquisitor fought with mechanical precision, each strike calculated, each defensive move efficient, while Ahsoka's style flowed more naturally. Guided by intuition as much as training. When they burst into the now deserted food court, the expanded battleground changed the engagement's dynamics. Ahsoka immediately utilized the additional space for acrobatic maneuvers that showcased her Togruta agility, while the Inquisitor revealed a technological advantage, their lightsaber hilt extending to become double-bladed, with both ends ignited. "Now," Naruto murmured, hands forming familiar seals. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 duplicates materialized around the periphery of the combat zone, each drawing kunai knives from concealed pouches. The Inquisitor registered the new threats with visible surprise despite their concealing mask, head swiveling to track multiple opponents simultaneously. "What manner of force technique is this?" they demanded, lightsaber spinning defensively to create a barrier of crimson energy. "Not force," Naruto replied as his clones closed in from different angles. "Something else entirely." The coordinated attack forced the Inquisitor to divide their attention, creating openings for Ahsoka to exploit. She drove her Shoto blade through the Imperial agent's defenses, scoring a glancing hit on their armored torso that elicited a mechanical hiss of pain. Wounded but far from defeated, the Inquisitor retaliated with a powerful force push that sent both Ahsoka and the nearest shadow clones flying backward into dining tables. They followed this with a throwing motion that sent their spinning lightsaber in a deadly arc toward Naruto himself. He dodged with millimeters to spare, feeling the heat of the blade as it passed, then counterattacked with a technique he had been developing, chakra molded into the palm of his hand, compressed and shaped into a familiar spiral, but with an added element drawn from his growing force sensitivity. Rasengan. Force spiral, he called, the blue-white energy in his palm taking on an unusual luminescence as it incorporated ambient force energy into its rotation. The Inquisitor recalled their lightsaber just in time to interpose it between themselves and Naruto's attack. When the force-enhanced Rasengan met the energy blade, both techniques destabilized, the lightsaber shorting out temporarily while the Rasengan dispersed in a shockwave that sent both combatants staggering apart. Ahsoka seized the opportunity, closing the distance with force-enhanced speed and bringing her primary lightsaber down in an overhead strike aimed at the Inquisitor's weapon hand. The Imperial agent narrowly avoided losing the limb entirely, but Ahsoka's blade scored deeply across their forearm, severing armor plates and damaging the mechanisms beneath. With a snarl of pain that the vocoder translated into static-laced distortion, the Inquisitor triggered something on their belt. Smoke grenades detonated around them, filling the area with dense, acrid vapor. When it cleared seconds later, they had vanished, a maintenance hatch in the flow hanging open to reveal access to even lower levels. "Should we pursue?" one of Naruto's shadow clones asked, peering into the dark opening. Ahsoka deactivated her lightsabers, her expression troubled. "No, they're calling for reinforcements by now. We need to extract what information we can from Kessa's body and disappear before more Imperials arrive." The clones dispersed with small puffs of smoke, returning their gathered intelligence directly to Naruto's consciousness. Multiple angles of the combat, details about the Inquisitor's fighting style and equipment, observations about structure. Features they might later use for escape. As they hurried back toward Kessa's body, Naruto noticed Ahsoka's pensive expression. "That name they mentioned, Vader. You recognized it?" She nodded tersely. "A new Sith Lord who emerged after the Republic became the Empire." Rumors say he personally led the assault on the Jedi Temple, and now commands the Inquisitors who hunt down Force sensitives. There's more, Naruto observed. Something personal. Ahsoka's pace faltered momentarily. Just rumors, she replied, her tone making it clear the subject was closed for now. They reached Kessa's body and worked quickly. Ahsoka keeping watch while Naruto searched the corpse for any intelligence materials. He found an encrypted datapad, a security passkey for Senate auxiliary systems, and a hollow C. Communicator with recent transmission logs. Jackpot, Naruto murmured, pocketing the items as distant sirens indicated security forces responding to the disturbance. Time to disappear. They moved, with practiced coordination through maintenance corridors and service ducts, utilizing paths they had mapped during previous reconnaissance. Within minutes, they had reached an automated waste reclama tunnel that would carry them several kilometers from the incident site without security checkpoints. Only when they emerged into a different sector of the underworld, far from the market where the confrontation had occurred, did they pause to regroup in the relative privacy of an abandoned droid repair shop. The Inquisitor complicated things, Ahsoka observed, checking her lightsabers for damage. If the Empire was targeting Kess, they already know about the assassination plot. Or parts of it, Naruto countered, examining the recovered datapad. The Imperials might have identified H.I.M. as a separatist agent without knowing the specific operation. Either way, we need to decode this data quickly. He attempted to activate the device, only to find it security locked with encryption beyond his technical expertise. Ahsoka tried several bypass techniques she had learned during her Jedi training, but the security measures proved too sophisticated. We need a slicer, she concluded with frustration. Someone with high-level decryption capabilities. Or we need our Senate contact, Naruto suggested. Whoever Fulcrum arranged for us to meet might have resources we don't. Ahsoka nodded, checking the chrono on her wrist device. The meeting isn't scheduled until tomorrow. But given these developments, we move up the timeline, Naruto finished her thought. Contact Fulcrum, explain the situation. As Ahsoka composed a secure message using their specialized communication protocols, Naruto found himself drawn into an unexpected conversation with his internal partner. That Imperial warrior, Kurama rumbled thoughtfully. Their force signature was distorted. Distorted how? Naruto inquired, having learned to value the Nine Tails' insights into this galaxy's energy patterns. Like a chakra network damaged by improperly channeled nature energy, Kurama explained. Their connection to the Force seemed artificially modified, strengthened in some aspects but crippled in others. Unbalanced, unstable. Could that explain their fighting style? The mechanical precision but lack of adaptability. Precisely, Kurama confirmed. They fight with power but not harmony. Whoever trained them valued obedience over mastery. The observation aligned with what they had learned about the Empire's approach to Force users, treating them as weapons to be controlled rather than individuals to be developed. It contrasted sharply with both the Jedi philosophy Ahsoka had described and the shinobi training Naruto had received in Konoha. Message sent, Ahsoka announced. Interrupting his internal dialogue, Fulcrum acknowledges the urgency and has arranged an immediate meeting with our contact. We're to proceed to the coordinates now. Location, mid-level diplomatic district, Ahsoka replied, looking somewhat uneasy. Much closer to the surface than I'm comfortable with, given recent events. Naruto understood her concern. The deeper levels of Korusca, NT provided anonymity and escape routes that the more regulated upper levels lacked. Moving higher meant increased surveillance, security checkpoints, and potential exposure. We'll need better disguises, he noted. Glancing down at his now somewhat battle-worn clothing, Ahsoka gestured toward a storage compartment in the abandoned shop. Already planned for that contingency. Inside, they found de-sealed containers with higher quality attire appropriate for mid-level Coruscant. Nothing ostentatious enough to attract attention, but sufficient to pass as legitimate visitors to the diplomatic sector. Naruto's outfit included a formal tunic in muted blue with darker trim, tailored pants, and a half-cape that conveniently concealed weapons while adding an official appearance. For Ahsoka, similar, our attire adjusted for Togruta physiology, with strategic openings for her Montrals and Leku. You look, Naruto began when they had changed, then paused, searching for the right word. Respectable, Ahsoka suggested with a smile. Wry smile. I was going to say, uncomfortable, he corrected, noting the way she subtly adjusted the unfamiliar formal wear. Fashion was never emphasized in Jedi training, she admitted. Functional simplicity was the ideal. Same with Shinobi, Naruto related, tugging at his own collar. Except for certain specialized jonin who seemed to think fishnet was appropriate battle attire. The shared moment of levity eased some of the tension as they prepared to ascend to the higher levels. Before departing, they carefully concealed their weapons. Ahsoka's GHT sabers disassembled into components that appeared innocuous when separated, Naruto's kunai and shuriken distributed in specially designed hidden pouches. They utilized public transportation rather than attempting to slice into private systems, maintaining the appearance of ordinary citizens going about legitimate business. As they ascended through Coruscant's stratified society, the environmental changes were striking. Air quality improving, lighting transitioning from harsh artificial illumination to actual filtered sunlight, security presence becoming more sophisticated but less overtly aggressive. It's like different worlds stacked on top of each other, Naruto observed quietly as their transport passed through yet another security barrier. Completely separate realities depending on your level. Ahsoka nodded. Coruscant has always been this way, but the divisions have worsened during the war. Resources diverted to military operations, increased security protocols, declining infrastructure maintenance in lower levels. And now under Imperial control, Naruto added, noting the changed insignias on security forces they passed. Consolidating power rather than addressing inequality. His observations had grown more political during their months together, the shinobi's natural tactical awareness expanding to encompass larger systems of control and influence. In turn, Ahsoka had absorbed elements of his more direct approach to problem solving, creating a partnership that balanced her strategic patience with his decisive action. Their transport eventually delivered Hem to a quiet plaza in the diplomatic sector, where carefully maintained gardens created the illusion of nature within the urban expanse. Elegant buildings housed embassies, consulates, and residents. For diplomatic personnel from across the galaxy, though noticeably fewer non-human establishments than historical records suggested had existed before the Empire's formation. Following Fulcrum's coup, RDI Nates led them to a modest structure identified as a cultural exchange center for Outer Rim worlds. Its entrance featured art and artifacts from various planets, creating the impression of a museum or educational facility rather than a political institution. Clever, Ahsoka murmured as they approached. Official enough to justify security measures, informal enough to allow diverse visitors without scrutiny. They were met in the lobby by a protocol droid whose bronze plating had been polished to a warm glow. Greetings, visitors, it intoned in precisely modulated basic. How may the Cultural Exchange Center assist you today? Quote, we're here regarding the Ryloth historical exhibit, Ahsoka replied, using the predetermined code phrase. The droid's photoreceptors flickered momentarily, processing the authentication, before it responded. Yes, Senator Chuchi is expecting you in the private viewing gallery. Please follow me. As they proceeded deeper into the facility, security NNERS discreetly embedded in the architecture assessed them for weapons and recording devices. Naruto could sense the technology through his heightened awareness but gave no indication of noticing. Senator, he communicated silently to Ahsoka through subtle hand gestures they had developed, a modified version of Anbu sign language integrated with Jedi hand signals. Unexpected, she replied similarly. Proceed with caution. Political involvement complicates matters. The protocol droid led them to an ornate door inscribed with artistic representations of various Outer Rim cultures. After activating the security release, it stood aside. Senator Chuchi will receive you now. The room beyond was a comfortable meeting space designed to showcase rotating cultural exhibits. Currently, the displays featured historical artifacts from Ryloth, though Naruto immediately noted that certain cases stood empty, with small placards explaining that the items had been temporarily relocated for pre-servation assessment, likely a cover for removing valuables during politically uncertain times. Standing beside a window that overlooked the diplomatic plaza was a young woman with striking features, lavender blue skin, golden eyes, and violet hair styled in an elaborate arrangement that incorporated traditional Pantoran elements while conforming to current Coruscant fashion. She wore formal sanat, Oriel attire in shades of blue and silver, with subtle insignia indicating her planetary allegiance. Senator Ryo Chuchi, the droid announced unnecessarily before departing, the door sealing behind it with a soft but definitive click. The senator turned fully to face them, her expression transitioning from diplomatic neutrality to genuine interest as she assessed her visitors. "Fulcrum spoke highly of you both," she began without preamble, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone educated in the core worlds but with the slightest hint of a more provincial origin. "Though I admit, I expected our meeting to occur under less urgent circumstances. Recent developments forced us to accelerate the timeline," Ahsoka explained, maintaining a respectful distance. A Separatist agent W.I.T.H. information about a Senate operation was eliminated by an Imperial Inquisitor before we could interrogate him. If the senator was surprised by this direct approach, she concealed it well. "I see. And I presume you recovered something from this agent that requires technical assistance." Naruto nodded, impressed by her quick grasp of the situation. "An encrypted datapad and Senate access credentials. We believe they contain details about an assassination plot targeting someone within the Senate." Chuchi gestured toward a secure workstation integrated into an antique desk, technology disguised as traditional furniture. "May I?" After receiving the datapad, she activated specialized decryption protocols that bypassed the security measures with surprising efficiency. "Senatorial systems have master overrides," she explained, noting their reaction. "Officially for emergency governance continuity. Unofficially, for monitoring communications between potentially problematic representatives. The Empire doesn't trust its own Senate," Ahsoka observed. "The Emperor views the Senate as a transitional inconvenience," Chuchi corrected, her tone indicating this was not merely speculation. "To be maintained only until regional governors and the military establish direct control." As she worked, Naruto studied her with subtle attention. Despite her youth and relatively junior status within the Senate, Senator Chuchi carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to navigating dangerous political currents. More tellingly, she displayed none of the hesitation or fear that might be expected when meeting with individuals connected to Fulcrum's network of dissidents. "There," she announced after several minutes of concentrated work. "I've bypassed the primary encryption. The secondary algorithms will take longer, but we now have access to basic file structures." She transferred the display to a larger screen embedded in the wall, revealing a complex directory of communications, schematics, and operational timetables. Most striking was a list of names, senators from various systems, categorized according to some system not immediately apparent. "Targets," Ahsoka suggested, studying the list. "No," Chuchi realized, her expression darkening as she analyzed the patterns. "Assets and obstacles. These senators," she indicated one category, "are identified as S. Empathetic to separatist objectives or vulnerable to manipulation. These others," she indicated a second, longer list that included her own name, "are classified as resistant to influence and recommended for removal from proceedings." Removal could mean many things, Naruto noted. Political sidelining, blackmail, actual assassination. "The operation timetable suggests the latter," Chuchi replied grimly, highlighting a section of encoded scheduling. "These correspond to upcoming critical votes on military appropriations and regional governance. The Empire is consolidating power, but facing resistance from senators who object to certain expansions of executive authority. So they're working with remaining separatist cells to eliminate opposition while maintaining plausible deniability," Ahsoka concluded. "The Empire officially condemns separatist terrorism while secretly facilitating it when convenient." Chuchi nodded, her golden eyes reflecting both anger and resignation. Quote, "It's consistent with patterns of observed. The question is, what do we do with this information? Standard security protocols are compromised if Imperial authorities are involved in the conspiracy." Naruto exchanged a glance with Ahsoka, a silent communication born of months working together. She gave a subtle nod, authorizing his judgment on how much to reveal. "We have resources beyond official channels," he stated carefully. "People who can provide security without being compromised by Imperial influence. But we need to understand the full scope of the threat, timing, methods, primary targets." The senator studied him with renewed interest, her analytical gaze taking in details she had initially overlooked. The subtle warrior's grace in his posture, the alertness in his unusual blue eyes. the faint whisker-like markings on his cheeks that suggested exotic heritage. "You're not from the Outer Rim worlds, are you?" she asked directly. Despite what fulcrum implied, Naruto's lips quirked in a small, appreciative smile at her perceptiveness. "No, I'm from considerably further away." Before the conversation could delve deeper into his origins, the datapad emitted a soft chime, indicating a breakthrough in the secondary decryption. Chuchi returned her attention to the device, navigating through newly accessible files until she found detailed operational plans. "Here," she indicated, bringing the relevant data to the main display. "The primary operation is scheduled for the Empire Day reception, 3 days from now. All senators will be in attendance, along with military leaders, corporate representatives, and imperial dignitaries. Maximum political impact," Ahsoka observed. "An attack during Empire Day celebrations would be symbolic as well as practical." "The method is..." Chuchi's voice faltered slightly as she examined the technical specifications. "Advanced biotoxin, airborne delivery through the environmental systems. Targeted to affect specific genetic profiles. They're designing a poison that will only kill certain senators." Naruto asked incredulously. "The technology exists," Chuchi confirmed. "Developed during the Clone Wars for potential use against specific enemy populations. Then officially abandoned as ethically problematic." Apparently, the research continued in secret. The implications were chilling. Not just the immediate threat to specific senators, but the precedent such an attack would establish. Targeted biological weapons could eventually be refined for use against entire planetary populations with particular genetic characteristics. "We need to warn the targeted senators immediately," Ahsoka stated, the former Jedi's instinct to protect asserting itself. "Not through official channels," Chuchi cautioned. "If Imperial security is compromised, a formal alert would tip off the conspirators. They would simply adjust their timeline or methods. Then we warn them personally," Naruto suggested. "Discreetly. Those we can trust absolutely." The senator's expression became thoughtful. "There are perhaps a dozen I would trust with this information. But approaching them individually would take time we may not have." "What about a trusted proxy?" Ahsoka proposed. "Someone with legitimate access to multiple senators, whose activities wouldn't attract undue attention." Chuchi considered this, then nodded slowly. "My senior aide could arrange private meetings under the guise of discussing the upcoming appropriations vote. It would seem routine enough to avoid suspicion, while we focus on identifying and deneutralizing the actual delivery mechanism for the biotoxin," Naruto added, completing the strategic outline. Their planning was interrupted by a subtle vibration from Ahsoka's secure communicator. She checked the device, her expression tightening as she read the message. "Ventress has made contact. She's tracked separatist movements to a research facility in the industrial sector. Believes she's located the biotoxin production site." Quote, "Then we divide our efforts," Chuchi decided with the swift certainty of someone accustomed to crisis management. "I'll coordinate the political response, RNING trusted allies and establishing contingency plans if the attack proceeds despite our efforts. I'll rendezvous with Ventress, investigate the production facility," Ahsoka determined. "And I'll focus on the Senate building's environmental systems," Naruto completed. "Identify vulnerabilities, possible delivery points, establish countermeasures." The senator looked between them, a mixture of respect and curiosity in her golden eyes. "You work together with remarkable efficiency for operatives from different backgrounds." "We've had practice," Ahsoka replied simply. "Indeed." Chuchi tapped a sequence on her datapad, causing a concealed panel in the wall to slide open and reveal a secure storage compartment. From this, she withdrew 3 high-end encryption devices and a set of official authorization codes. "These will give you access to most Senate auxiliary systems without triggering security alerts. The encryption units will allow us to communicate securely." As they each took a device, Naruto found himself impressed by the senator's preparedness. "You keep emergency insurrection equipment in a cultural exchange center." A small, sardonic smile touched Chuchi's lips. Quote, "I've found that appreciation for history often involves preparing to avoid repeating it." She hesitated, then added more seriously, "When I entered the Senate 3 years ago, I believed in the Republic's fundamental principles. If not all its practices. I've watched those principles erode systematically, replaced by fear and authoritarian control. You could leave, Ahsoka observed. Many senators have retired to their home worlds, claiming health concerns are family obligations, and abandon my responsibility to Pantora, to the ideals I still believe in. Chuchi shook her head firmly. Retreat solves nothing. The galaxy needs people willing to work within the system for change, just as it needs those. Her gaze moved meaningfully between Naruto and Ahsoka, who operate beyond its constraints. There was something in her forthright idealism that reminded Naruto powerfully of his younger self, the determination to improve flawed systems rather than abandon them, the refusal to accept. Cynical pragmatism is the only adult response to corruption. It resonated with his own journey in Konoha, from outcast child to respected shinobi who challenged entrenched prejudices. We should move quickly, he said, refocusing on the immediate threat. The longer we wait, the more opportunity for the conspirators to detect our interest. They established a communication protocol, arranged a secure location for subsequent meetings, and prepared to separate for their individual missions. As Ahsoka excused herself to respond to Ventress's increasingly urgent messages, Naruto found himself momentarily alone with Senator Chuchi. Fulcrum mentioned you have unusual abilities, she said, watching him with undisguised interest. Different from the Jedi or Sith traditions. Naruto considered how much to reveal, then decided that a practical demonstration might establish trust more effectively than vague explanations. You could say that, he acknowledged, forming a simple hand seal. A shadow clone materialized beside him, a perfect duplicate down to the formal attire and subtle weaponry concealed beneath. Chuchi's golden eyes widened, her diplomatic composure momentarily replaced by genuine astonishment. How? Chakra manipulation, Naruto explained succinctly. Energy similar to your force, but utilized differently. This is a solid duplicate, capable of independent action, able to relay information back to me when it disperses. The senator approached the clone with scholarly curiosity, examining it from multiple angles. Not a hologram or illusion. Remarkable. Her analytical mind quickly processed potential applications. This would be invaluable for security operations, infiltration, diplomatic situations requiring presence in multiple locations. It has its limitations, Naruto cautioned. The clones disperse if they take significant damage, and they divide my available chakra among them. But yes, they're tactically versatile, and completely unknown to Imperial intelligence. Chuchi observed thoughtfully. A significant advantage. She returned her attention to the original Naruto, studying him with renewed interest. Your homeworld must be key. Extraordinary to produce such abilities. A familiar pang of homesickness twisted in Naruto's chest at the mention of his world. It has its problems, like any place. But yes, there are aspects I miss. Something in his tone must have conveyed more than he intended, because Chuchi's expression softened with unexpected empathy. You're very far from home, aren't you? Further than mere hyperspace travel could explain. Before Naruto could formulate a response that neither confirmed nor denied the perceptive observation, Ahsoka returned, her expression urgent. We need to move. Ventress Rep. Ort's increased activity at the research facility. They may be accelerating their timeline. The moment of unexpected connection broken, Naruto nodded and dispersed his shadow clone, the brief puff of smoke marking its disappearance, drawing one final look of fascination from the senator. Be careful, Chuchi advised as they prepared to depart through separate exits to avoid being connected. IAL response to threats has become increasingly disproportionate since the Emperor consolidated power. We've noticed, Ahsoka replied dryly. As they left the cultural center via different routes, Naruto found himself reflecting on Senator Chuchi's perceptiveness and courage. In a political environment increasingly dominated by fear and self-preservation, her willingness to risk her position, perhaps even her life, to maintain principles spoke to a strength of character that transcended worlds. She reminds me of Tsunade, he remarked to Kurama as he navigated the carefully manicured paths of the diplomatic sector. That same combination of political skill and personal conviction. With less gambling and sake, the Nine Tails observed dryly. But yes, there are similarities. Humans, with genuine integrity, appear regardless of which dimension they inhabit. The observation led naturally to thoughts of home, of friends and mentors who might still be fighting, still believing Naruto would somehow return to help them defeat Madara. The uncertainty of their fate remained a constant ache, dulled by time and new connections but never truly absent. Do you still sense nothing from our world? He asked Kurama, an inquiry he made periodically as the Nine Tails' connection to the Force evolved. Nothing definitive, Kurama replied, his mental voice reflective rather than dismissive. But something has changed recently. The Force responds differently when I reach for our dimensional resonance, less resistance, more echo. Echo, like calling into a canyon and hearing your voice return. The Nine Tails elaborated. Before, reaching toward our home dimension felt like shouting into absolute void. Now, there's a kind of response, faint, distorted, but present. The info. Our Mashin kindled a cautious hope that Naruto had disciplined himself to suppress. Could it mean a connection is forming? A possible way back, perhaps, Kurama acknowledged. Or it could simply mean, my sensitivity to cross-dimensional energies is improving with exposure to the Force. Don't build expectations on such tenuous perceptions, Kit. The measured caution was typical of their relationship. Kurama providing a grounding counterbalance to Naruto's natural optimism. Over the years, and especially during their time in this new galaxy, the dynamic had evolved from antagonistic to genuinely complementary. Reaching the transit platform that would carry him toward the Senate district, Naruto activated the encrypted communicator Senator Chuchi had provided. En route to primary site, he reported succinctly. Estimated arrival 30 minutes. Acknowledged, came Ahsoka's equally terse reply. Rendezvous with Asset confirmed. Proceeding to secondary location. The formal, anonymous phrasing was intentional. Even encrypted communications could potentially be intercepted, with voice patterns identified if not the actual content. They had established protocols for varying levels of security, with this highest level reserved for operations in heavily monitored areas like the upper levels of Coruscant. As the transport accelerated toward the Senate district, Naruto gazed at the massive governmental complex dominating the skyline ahead. The architecture spoke to the Republic's ancient foundations, grand, imposing structures designed to project permanence and authority. Now, Imperial banners had been integrated into the design, their stark geometric patterns contrasting with the more organic Republic aesthetic. A building in transition, Kurama observed, following Naruto's line of sight. Like this galaxy itself, old structures being absorbed or replaced by new ones, with conflict wherever they meet. Reminds me of the Hokage Tower during reconstruction, Naruto replied. Old foundation, new upper levels. Temporary supports everywhere. Except these temporary supports carry weapons and enforce compliance, the Nine Tails noted dryly, referring to the increase. Stormtrooper presence visible even from a distance. The observation wasn't inaccurate. Since the Republic's transformation into the Empire, military presence had become increasingly normalized in civilian spaces. What had begun as security measures during the Clone Wars had evolved into permanent infrastructure for monitoring and controlling the population. Disembarking at a public transit hub near the Senate complex, Naruto adjusted his formal attire and adopted the purposeful stride of someone with legitimate business in the government district. The authorization codes provided by Senato Chuchi allowed him to pass the initial security checkpoints without difficulty, his cover identity registered as a cultural liaison from an Outer Rim world consulting on upcoming celebratory events. Once inside the vast complex, Naruto created a shadow clone in a secluded maintenance corridor, having it transform with a puff of smoke into the appearance of a standard maintenance droid. This disguised clone would access environmental control systems through service channels while Naruto himself maintained his cultural liaison cover, establishing an alibi through visible interaction with administrative personnel. As he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Senate building, Naruto couldn't help but compare it to the structured complexity of Konoha's administrative systems. Both featured layers of security, specialized departments, and hierarchies of access, though the Senate operated on a scale that dwarfed anything in the shinobi world. His cultural liaison identity granted access to the event planning division, where preparations for the Empire Day celebration were underway. This provided perfect cover for gathering intelligence about the environmental systems that would be operating during the reception, including temporary modifications to accommodate the unusually large gathering. The Emperor has requested enhanced circulation for the main reception hall, explained an officious human administrator. Reviewing specifications on a datapad. Atmospheric quality befitting the dignity of the occasion, he said. Naturally, Naruto agreed, maintaining the slightly deferential manner expected of an Outer Rim representative. Will that require modifications to the existing systems? Already underway, the administrator confirmed, bringing up schematics that Naruto committed to memory. Auxiliary processing units are being installed to handle the additional load. Nothing but the finest filtration and circulation technology for Imperial dignitaries. Of course, Naruto murmured, identifying the perfect vulnerability in these enhancements, new components, installed specifically for the event, outside the regular security protocols. My delegation would be interested in similar technology for our regional governor's headquarters. The manufacturer. The casual inquiry yielded the name of a corporation with known separatist connections during the Clone Wars. Now apparently rehabilitated as an Imperial contractor. Another piece of the conspiracy fell into place. Meanwhile, his disguised shadow clone had accessed the Environmental Control Center, apping the physical infrastructure that corresponded to the schematics Naruto was viewing officially. Through their shared consciousness, he built a comprehensive understanding of how the biotoxin WOU-LD likely be deployed, introduced through the auxiliary processing units, dispersed via the enhanced circulation system, targeted primarily at the reception hull where specific senators would be gathered. The administrator's comlink chirped, drawing his attention away momentarily. "Excuse me, liaison. Security update. Must respond immediately." As the official stepped away, Naruto casually adjusted his position to maintain line of sight with the datapad still displaying the environmental system schematics. Reaching out with senses enhanced by months of training alongside Force users, he detected a subtle shift in the building's security posture, increased communication among guards, slight adjustments in patrol patterns. "Something's happening," he communicated to Kurama. "Security tightening, but not at high alert levels. More like elevated awareness. Your presence may have been flagged," the Nine-Tails suggested. "Or perhaps they've discovered the separatist agent's elimination." Either possibility warranted caution. Naruto signaled his shadow clone to complete its reconnaissance and prepare for extraction, while he maintained his cultural liaison facade with practiced ease. When the administrator returned, his manner had subtly changed, still professional but more reserved, his eyes occasionally flicking toward security personnel visible in the corridor outside. "I apologize, but I've been called to an urgent meeting regarding protocol adjustments," he stated, deactivating the datapad. "Perhaps we could continue this discussion tomorrow." "Of course," Naruto agreed smoothly. "The Empire's efficiency is legendary. I wouldn't want to impede important preparations." As he was escorted toward the public areas of the complex, Naruto noted increased security presence along their route. Not directly confrontational, but positioned to observe and potentially intercept if necessary. His shadow clone, still disguised as a maintenance droid, transmitted its final observations before dispersing itself in a secluded utility corridor, the information flowing back to Naruto's consciousness without visible indication. The picture was now complete. Auxiliary processing units being installed in specific access points, bypass codes programmed to override standard safety protocols during the reception, delivery mechanism designed to aerosolize the biotoxin for max immun dispersal through the enhanced circulation system. Reaching the public transit hub without incident, Naruto departed the Senate complex with the same purposeful confidence with which he had arrived. Only when he had boarded public transportation heading away from the governmental district did he activate the secure communicator. "Primary reconnaissance complete," he reported tersely. "Infiltration point identified. Delivery mechanism confirmed. Timeline accelerated. Implementation already underway." "Understood," came Senator Chuchi's reply, her voice tight with controlled tension. "Secondary source confirms. Production facility active. Countermeasures required within 36 hours." The abbreviated exchange conveyed the essential. The assassination plot was moving forward more quickly than anticipated. With physical infrastructure already being positioned, whatever had caused the accelerated timeline, perhaps the Inquisitor's elimination of Kess, they now faced a significantly compressed window for intervention. As the transport carried him toward the rendezvous point established for regrouping with Ahsoka and Ventress, Naruto found himself drawn into unexpected introspection. Political machinations he had uncovered, layers of deception, calculated betrayal, ideological manipulation, reminded him uncomfortably of elements within Konoha's own history. The third Hokage's failure to prevent Danzo's shadow operations, he mused to Kurama. The Uchiha massacre, the exploitation of Jinchuriki as weapons. Different context, same patterns. Power structures inevitably develop similar dysfunctions. Kurama observed, his ancient perspective lending weight to the analysis. Whether hidden village or galactic empire, those who control violence ultimately face the same temptations to misuse it. But also the same opportunities to reform it, Naruto countered, his inherent optimism asserting itself. Konoha changed. It's still changing. Maybe this galaxy can too. The Nine-Tails' response was interrupted by a sudden, disorienting shift in Naruto's perception. The transport carriage around him seemed to waver, colors bleeding into one another, sounds becoming distorted as though underwater. For a moment, brief but undeniable, he felt a powerful tug from somewhere beyond normal sensory range, as though something vast and distant had reached across dimensions to brush against his consciousness. Naruto. Kurama's voice cut through the distortion, anchoring him back to reality. Focus on my chakra. Stabilize your perception. The moment passed as quickly as it had come. The world reasserting its solidity around him. Fellow passengers continued their journeys, oblivious to his momentary disassociation. What was that? Naruto asked, his internal voice unsteady. A dimensional resonance, Kurama replied, his tone unusually serious. Stronger than anything we've experienced since arriving. Something or someone in our home dimension reached out. Intentionally or unintentionally. And for a moment, you responded. Could it be Madara, using some technique to try and pull me back? Unlikely, the Nine-Tails assessed. This felt different from Madara's chakra signature. More desperate, emotional, raw. The implications sent Naruto's thoughts racing. If someone from Konoha was attempting to reach across dimensions, perhaps Tsunade with some advanced medical technique, or Kakashi using a modified space-time jutsu, it meant they were still fighting. Still searching for him. Still alive. We need to understand what just happened, he determined. A new urgency entering his thoughts. If there's a way to establish contact, to return, or a way for others to be pulled through, as we were, Kurama cautioned. Dimensional breaches work both ways, Kit. Whatever caused this resonance could potentially draw others from our world into this galaxy, or draw beings from this reality into ours. The warning tempered Naruto's excitement with sobering perspective. Uncontrolled dimensional rifts could create catastrophes in both worlds, exactly the kind of disaster Dooku had hinted at exploiting during their confrontation at the mining facility. We need to consult with Ahsoka and Ventress, he concluded. After we address the immediate threat to the Senate. Priorities, Kurama agreed, though I suspect these events may be connected in ways we don't yet understand. The transport arrived at their designated transfer point, a commercial district bustling enough to mask their movements but not so security-heavy as to risk unnecessary scrutiny. Naruto disembarked, moving with casual confidence through the crowds while maintaining situational awareness that had become second nature during his shinobi career. He had nearly reached the predetermined meeting location when another wave of disorientation struck, stronger than before, accompanied by fragmentary visions that flashed across his consciousness. Sasuke, eyes bleeding, G from overuse of the Mangekyo Sharingan, channeling chakra into an elaborate seal array. Sakura, her hands glowing with medical ninjutsu as she stabilized something pulsing with unstable energy. Kakashi, Sharingan exposed, coordinating a complex space-time technique with other Jonin. And at the center of it all, a swirling vortex of chakra, not unlike the dimensional rift that had brought him to this galaxy. But more controlled, more directed. The vision faded, leaving Naruto braced against a decorative column, breathing heavily as though he'd run kilometers without rest. Passers-by gave him curious or concerned glances, which he waved off with a reassuring smile and straightened posture. They're trying to create a stable portal, he realized, the fragments coalescing into understanding. They're trying to bring me home. Or at least establish contact, Kurama amended more cautiously. But the attempt is causing dimensional instability, ripples that we're detecting as these episodes. The revelation added yet another layer of complexity to their already precarious situation. Beyond the immediate Senate conspiracy and the longer-term threat posed by Dooku's dimensional research. Now Naruto had to consider the possibility of his friends inadvertently creating interdimensional problems in their attempts to locate him. Reaching the meeting point, a modest cafe with private booths and multiple exits, Naruto found Ahsoka already waiting, her expression shifting from watchful alertness to concern as she assessed his condition. "What happened?" she asked quietly as he slid into the booth across from her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Naruto confirmed, keeping his voice low despite the cafe's ambient noise providing cover for their conversation. "Dimensional resonance. Twice in the last hour. Stronger than anything since I arrived here." Ahsoka's eyes widened slightly, her natural Jedi caution warring with scientific curiosity. "Visions. Sensations. Both. I saw my friends, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi-sensei, working on some kind of jutsu. A dimensional portal, I think. Trying to find me, or bring me back. That's," Ahsoka began, then paused, choosing her words carefully. "That could be opportunity or catastrophe, depending on how stable their technique is." "Exactly what Kurama said," Naruto agreed. "But it's the timing that concerns me. Why now, after months of nothing? Why two powerful resonances in a single hour?" Before Ahsoka could theorize, Ventress arrived, sliding into the booth with fluid grace that belied her battle readiness. The former Sith assassin had abandoned her usual dark attire for the disguise of a mid-level corporate representative, though the change of clothing did little to mask her predatory essence. "Your dimensional problems are multiplying," she announced without preamble, her silver eyes fixed on Naruto with disconcerting intensity. "The research facility I infiltrated wasn't just producing biotoxins. They're experimenting with technology remarkably similar to what we encountered in the mining facility." "Dimensional technology," Ahsoka clarified, alarm evident in her voice. Ventress nodded, her expression uncharacteristically grave. "More advanced than what Dooku demonstrated. They've managed to create small, controlled rifts, temporary openings between realities. Scientists referred to them as windows, rather than doors, observation points rather than transit methods." The implications chilled Naruto to his core. "They're looking into my world. Studying it, maybe planning invasion points." "Precisely," Ventress confirmed, "and based on research logs I accessed, they've achieved significant breakthroughs within the past few days. They're recording Sual energy fluctuations from the target dimension, what they're calling reciprocal resonance. The pieces aligned with terrible clarity. It's not coincidence," Naruto realized. "The attempts from my world to reach me and the Empire's dimensional experiments are interacting with each other. Creating instability, weakening barriers between worlds. A dimensional feedback loop," Ahsoka suggested, her analytical mind quickly grasping the concept. "Each attempt reinforces the other, potentially creating vulnerabilities that neither side fully controls." Ventress's lips curved in a cold, humorless smile. "And naturally, the Empire sees this as opportunity rather than warning. Their researchers are attempting to capitalize on these fluctuations, using them to stabilize their own rifts." Quote, "We need to shut down their research facility," Naruto determined, his voice hardening with resolve. "Before they succeed in establishing a permanent connection. Without alerting Imperial authority. To our interest in dimensional technology," Ahsoka added. "If they realize we're specifically targeting those experiments, they'll increase security and accelerate the research," Ventress finished. "Which is why I've already established our cover. As far as facility records indicate, a catastrophic containment failure will occur approximately 6 hours from now, the unfortunate result of Hing experimental procedures to meet arbitrary deadlines." Naruto and Ahsoka exchanged impressed glances. Ventress's efficiency, while sometimes alarming in its ruthlessness, had distinct advantages in crisis situations. "And the Senate assassination plot?" Ahsoka inquired, returning to their more immediate concern. "Linked," Ventress stated flatly. "The biotoxin is merely one component of a larger operation. The elimination of resistant senators would remove opposition to increased funding for the Dimensional Research Program, which is currently classified as a Special Weapons Development Initiative in Imperial budgets. The interconnected conspiracy was breathtaking in its scope and ambition: eliminate political opposition, secure unlimited funding, develop cross-dimensional capabilities." potentially access new worlds for Imperial exploitation. Every element supported the others, creating a self-reinforcing strategic framework. So we have two objectives, Naruto summarized. P. Prevent the assassination at the Senate reception, and destroy the dimensional research before it creates permanent connections to my world. 3 objectives, Ahsoka corrected. We also need to understand what's happening on your side of the dimensional barrier. If your friends are attempting to create a portal, we need to find a way to warn them about the dangers of interaction with Imperial experiments. The challenge seemed almost insurmountable, preventing a sophisticated political assassination, destroying a heavily guarded research facility, and somehow communicating across dimensions, all within a matter of hours. Yet Naruto felt an unexpected calm settling over him, the clarity that had always come in moments of greatest crisis. We'll need Senator Chuchi's help for the Senate operation, he determined. Her position gives her access we can't otherwise obtain. Already arranged, Ahsoka confirmed. She's identified the auxiliary processing units being installed and has authority to order inspection protocols that will effectively neutralize them. For the research facility, Ventress continued, I've established access credentials and mapped security systems. A targ. ETED operation with proper timing could succeed with minimal engagement. And for the dimensional communication. Naruto paused, considering the unprecedented challenge. I might have an idea. If resonances are occurring naturally when my friends attempt contact, perhaps we can amplify them. Create a controlled response they can detect. Using what? Ahsoka asked. We don't have dimensional technology of our own. We have something potentially more effective, Naruto replied, a plan forming as he spoke. We have Kurama, a being whose chakra already spans the dimensional divide because He exists partially in both realities through our connection. An interesting theory, the Nine Tails commented within Naruto's mind. Though not without significant risks to your chakra network and possibly your physical form. When has that ever stopped us? Naruto countered with characteristic determination. Aloud, he continued explaining to his companions. If I enter a specialized meditat, state, similar to sage mode but focused inward rather than outward, Kurama might be able to project a chakra signature strong enough to be detected by sensor-type ninja in my world. Not detailed communication, but at least a warning pulse they could recognize as deliberate. Both Ahsoka and Ventress appeared skeptical, though for different reasons. The Force doesn't typically work across dimensional barriers, Ahsoka noted. What makes you think chakra would behave differently? Because it already has, Naruto pointed out. My shadow clones, Rasengan, other techniques, they all function. In this galaxy despite originating from a different dimensional energy system. Chakra seems more portable than the Force. And more adaptable, Ventress added thoughtfully. I've observed how our techniques have begun incorporating Force elements over time. There's an integrative quality to chakra that might indeed transcend normal dimensional limitations. The theoretical discussion was interrupted by a priority alert from Naruto's secure communicator, Senator Chuchi requesting immediate contact. He activated the device, keeping the volume low despite the cafe's ambient noise. Urgent development. The senator's voice came through, tightly controlled but with underlying tension. Timeline accelerated significantly. Intelligence indicates operational deployment within 12 hours, not 36 as previously assessed. Reason for acceleration? Ahsoka inquired. Unknown, Chuchi replied, possibly related to security anomalies detected in the Senate complex earlier today. Regardless, we must assume the Empire Day reception is no longer the target. They'll move against individual senators in their private residences or offices. The strategic adjustment made sense, Sakri. Fissing the symbolic impact of an Empire Day attack for the practical certainty of eliminating targets before security could be enhanced. Your location secure? Naruto asked, immediate concern for THE Senator's safety overriding broader strategic considerations. Temporarily, Chuchi confirmed. I've implemented standard security protocols for verified threats. But private quarters aren't designed to withstand determined military assault. We're coming to you, Naruto decided. Coordinate with trusted security personnel, establish defensive perimeter. Agreed. Transmitting secure approach vectors now. As the communication ended, Ventress fixed Naruto with a sardonic gaze. How chivalrous. And our other objectives? We divide forces, Naruto replied without hesitation. Ahsoka coordinates Senate defense with Senator Chuchi. You proceed with facility sabotage as planned. I'll create shadow clones to assist both operations while attempting dimensional communication. Bold strategy, Ventress observed. Neither approving nor condemning. Though spreading yourself across 3 critical missions risks accomplishing none effectively. Shadow clones aren't just copies, Naruto explained. They're me. Same skills. Same determination. Same chakra. And when they disperse, I gain their experiences. It's how I've trained efficiently for years. And the chakra cost? Ahsoka asked, familiar enough with his techniques to understand the limitations. Significant, Naruto acknowledged, but manageable with Kurama's support. We've pushed boundaries before. The Nine Tails led agreement within their shared consciousness. Though attempting dimensional communication simultaneously will strain even our combined reserves. Be prepared for consequences, Kit. Always am, Naruto replied internally. Though both knew this was more bravado than accurate self-assessment. They finalized coordination details, established communication protocols, and prepared to separate for their respective missions. As they left the cafe through different exits to avoid being connected by surveillance, Naruto created 2 shadow clones in secluded locations, one to accompany Ahsoka to the Senate district. Another to assist Ventress with the research facility operation. The original Naruto proceeded to a location he had scouted days earlier, an abandoned communications relay station in Coruscant's mid-levels. Once used for planetary emergency broadcasts, the facility now stood forgotten in the ever-evolving technological landscape of the capital world. Its reinforced walls would MPEN any energy emissions from his attempts at dimensional contact, while its isolated position minimized risk of interruption. Reaching the facility required navigating through progressively less maintained urban corridors, transitional zones where upper-level affluence gave way to mid-level functionality. Security cameras became sparse, replaced by the more immediate deterrent of territorial gang markings and improvised barricades. Naruto moved through these obstacles with shinobi stealth, avoiding confrontation while maintaining awareness of potential threats. The relay station itself stood within a small courtyard overgrown with hardy Coruscant vegetation that had reclaimed the neglected space, pale, sun-starved plants that had evolved to survive on ambient light from surrounding structures. Inside, the facility retained its basic infrastructure, reinforced walls, power conduits, and central transmission chamber designed to shield sensitive equipment from external interference. Now, those same features would shield Naruto's chakra emissions from detection by Imperial sensors designed to monitor force usage. Setting up basic security measures to warn of approach, Naruto position. Ed himself in the center of the main transmission chamber. He sat in traditional meditation posture, hands forming a modified seal that combined elements of Sage Mode initiation with the focused NT ration used for entering his mindscape. Ready? He asked Kurama, mental voice steady despite the experimental nature of what they were attempting. As ready as one can be for improvised dimensional communication. The Nine Tails replied dryly. Focus on your connection to home, specific people, places, emotional anchors. I'll amplify and project. Naruto closed his eyes, steadying his breathing as he had been taught years ago when first learning chakra control. In his mind's eye, he visualized Konoha, the familiar skyline with Hokage Mountain overlooking the village, streets he had traversed thousands of times. Training grounds where he had developed his skills, faces of friends who had become family. Sasuke, his brother in all but blood, whose rivalry had pushed him to greater heights. Sakura, whose strength and compassion had grown alongside her formidable combat skills. Kakashi, whose quiet guidance had shaped Naruto's development as both shinobi and person. Tsunade, Iruka, Shikamaru, Hinata, Kiba, Gaara, each relationship forming a strand in the complex web that anchored him to his home dimension. As these connections crystallized in his consciousness, Kurama's chakra began to flow, not the violent, corrosive energy of their early relationship, but the harmonized power they had developed through partnership. It moved through Naruto's network with practiced ease, then began to shift in an unusual pattern, flowing outward yet simultaneously inward, as though seeking a path that existed orthogonally to normal space. I feel it, Kurama rumbled, his mental voice dissed. And as his consciousness extended beyond their usual connection. The dimensional boundary, thinner than before, fluctuating with energy from both sides. Naruto maintained his focus, providing the S-table anchor point from which Kurama could project outward. He felt the Nine Tails' chakra stretching, thinning as it extended across an impossible distance, seeking resonant frequencies that might bridge the gap between worlds. Then, abruptly, contact, not communication in any conventional sense, but a definite response, like two magnets suddenly recognizing each other across a barrier, their fields interacting despite physical separation. Kurama's chakra found something familiar on the other side, something that recognized it, responded to it, reached back toward it. Now, Kurama instructed, his voice strained with effort. Project the warning. Simple concepts, powerful emotions. Words won't translate across the barrier. Naruto focused his thoughts into elemental concepts. Danger, invasion, caution, weight. He infused each concept with the emotional weight of his experiences in this galaxy, the imperial threat, the dimensional experiments, the potential catastrophe of uncontrolled portals. Not detailed intelligence, but a primal warning from one shinobi to another. Approach with extreme caution. Forces beyond your understanding await. The connection fluctuated, weakening as the dimensional barrier reasserted itself, then strengthening as something on the other side actively reinforced it. Naruto sensed familiar chakra signatures responding, Sasuke's distinctive lightning-natured energy. Sakura's precisely controlled medical chakra, others he couldn't individually identify but recognized as allies. For a brief, tantalizing moment, the connection stabilized enough for something like true communication, not words, but impressions flowing both ways. From the other side, found you. Working. Portal. Soon. From Naruto. Danger. Not alone. Enemies watching. Then, catastrophic disruption. A surge of foreign energy, neither chakra nor natural force, crashed through the connection like a tsunami overwhelming a carefully constructed dam. Naruto felt Kurama's consciousness recoil from the dimensional boundary as something else tried to force its way through, something cold, calculating, mechanical in its precision. Imperial sensors. Kurama snarled, withdrawing his chakra with desperate speed. They detected the dimensional fluctuation and are attempting to establish their own connection through our pathway. Naruto broke the meditation with a gasping cry, fizzy. Cal pain lancing through his body as the connection severed abruptly. He fell forward onto his hands, blood trickling from his nose and ears, evidence of the strain placed on his system by the interdimensional chakra projection. Did they get through? He demanded, voice ragged even in his internal communication. No, Kurama assured him, though the Nine Tails' own energy felt depleted, unstable. I collapsed the pathway before they could stabilize their intrusion. But they now have a template, a record of the frequency pattern that successfully bridged dimensions. They'll try to replicate it. The implications were chilling. Their attempt to warn Konoha about imperial interest had potentially accelerated the very threat they sought to prevent. Did our warning get through at least? Partially, Kurama assessed. They know you're alive, they know you're in another dimension. And they received some impression of danger. Whether that's sufficient to make them reconsider their portal attempts. The answer remained uncertain. Worse, the Imperial Research Facility had now detected their dimensional communication attempt, which might accelerate their own experiments. Naruto struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his face with the back of his hand. The chakra expenditure had been even more severe than anticipated, leaving him weakened at a time when multiple crises demanded his full strength. Status report. He rasped into his secure communicator, needing to know how his shadow clones were faring with the other missions. Senate defensive preparations underway, came Ahsoka's voice. Concern evident even through the encrypted channel. Your clone is assisting Senator Chuchi with security protocols. What happened? We felt a disturbance in the Force, powerful, unlike anything I've experienced. Dimensional communication partially successful, Naruto summarized tersely. Imperial systems detected the attempt. Potential acceleration of their research timeline. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.